Hello. Welcome.
Hi.
Welcome to the great.
Hello?
I guess it's dead.
Okay, this is Too Long for Twitter. This is a podcast which it exists because I needed a name. And someone came up with a name on Twitter, thankfully. Very much for that. This is about the US presidential election, and we're going to have a discussion on the US presidential election. This isn't necessarily about who was voted for and... Oh no. Oh no. Oh no. Oh shit, the fucking thing's repeating back at me. Good. I'm professional. It's not about who necessarily was voted for and why, and ooh, Clinton's a criminal, or Trump's a racist or a misogynist or whatever. It's about the effect and impact they are going to have. So I've got a range of minorities right here.
We're being deported after this. I'm sorry. It's not surviving it.
I've basically just got a different load of random people. I say random. They are people who have interesting or different perspectives on the matter. And I'm going to go down the list and they're going to introduce themselves now. First of all, Anna Mine.
Hi, I am a white female, so not a very big minority, but I'm Dutch, so I guess I am a minority in a weird way. Hi.
And you also work in the medical field.
Yes, I do. I'm a nursing student.
There we go. Mr. Cheers, Kevin.
Yes, hello. I'm Cheers Kevin, which is the alias you can use to find me on the internet, and I am here as an American straight white male so that we finally can get our thoughts heard.
This is basically Kevin is just he is the American. Freedom.
Hi, hi. I'm free. Well, maybe not too much after this.
America.
I am a white female. I was born and raised in a very conservative area and escaped into a nice liberal area that I live in now. I am trained in sciences, slightly medically trained, and I currently live with a few trans people and am disabled both mentally and physically. So I got the bingo going.
I feel bad, but not really. Ghost Insanity X.
Hello, I'm Ghost Insanity. I'm a white female and I'm a part of the LGBTQ plus community.
Short and sweet. That's how I like it. Jason 42.
Wow,
God,
that's
am I saying
sexist,
that
Matt.
right? I feel bad because.
I know, geez.
Ooh. Jason 42. Who are you and what are you about?
I'm Jason. I am an ex-Democrat from Central Illinois. I met Barack Obama in 2004 in my hometown, and I knew right then and there he was going to be president. I fought to get him in both times, 2008, 2012. But this cycle, I walked away from the party.
Ooh. Drama. See, it's like a fucking political drama now.
Ooh.
They're fucking turning up the stakes. Einstein Replica, also known as Katie.
Hi, I am representing the white, British, and transgender community, which is why I have a masculine voice and a feminine-sounding name. I'm very politically minded, watched the whole election, watched the last election in the UK, so I'm here giving, and I'm also 16, so I'm giving the young, transgender, LGBT, British perspective on the situation at hand.
And last but not least, Mr. Scott Manley.
Hello! So yeah, I'm really white and definitely very male, in case you hadn't guessed. In fact, but yeah, I mean, I think I'm in the US, I live in a very liberal area, and I'm actually in the process of getting my US citizenship. I will literally be taking a test later in the month where I show that I know more about US history than most Americans.
Are you sure? Have you confirmed that with them lately?
I based upon drunken conversations, I know my stuff.
But you really are a Scotsman, aren't you? Jesus Christ. It's drunken conversations.
Now, you see, since Scott is the highest billed person here, we have to give him more respect. So I'll just-
Come on.
You don't have to give me any
He's a
respect.
white
We're supposed to get
male.
paid for
He doesn't
this?
deserve any respect,
If
right?
I have to pray for him, I'm leaving.
Oh. Now, I want to start the conversation off by sort of Well, actually, this is sort of up for debate. I'm actually going to put it to what you want to talk about. Do you want to talk about something to do with Hillary, or do you want to talk about something to do with Donald Trump?
Silent.
I want to talk about Gary Johnson.
Go on.
What about Evan McMullin? I think
Oh.
Evan McMullin's a good.
Right.
Now, if I were to make a joke, I would, point out that if you voted for Gary Johnson and you're disappointed about Trump getting in, then hey, it doesn't matter because in 5 billion years the sun is going to destroy the Earth.
Rocket scientist right here. So, okay, let's have a discussion about the Electoral College first. Obviously, it's been determined that Hillary did win the popular vote, which, if you're not aware, in the United States, how it's determined is the president is actually voted for by the Electoral College, which is, in very, very, very basic terms, it's basically a state by state. Whoever wins the state gets all the members, the votes from the Electoral College in that state. Is the basic way to put it.
Except in states where they split the vote.
There we go, except for those. But the popular vote
in
is...
my state.
Oh, God.
There's like 2 states that do it. It's almost entirely electoral college, though.
Oh, dear.
Nebraska and Maine, I believe.
Nebraska and Maine are 2 most American-sounding states in the Union. But the popular vote is basically just, this is the people who voted. And it was, I think, determined Hillary won the popular vote by like 200,000 or something. It's quite a small margin. But then Donald Trump won the Electoral College by a very big margin. I think was it like 70?
It was 276 to 228 last time I saw it.
Okay, so yeah, he won by quite a big margin, so there's quite a big disparity there. And there's been mumblings by many people, calling for the Electoral College, because technically speaking, they can vote for whoever they want still, the Electoral College. They don't necessarily have to.
I'm not sure that's actually correct. I believe with some states, the delegates are required to vote for the
in some
party.
states, it's been made illegal for it. But
Okay.
in a lot of states, the electors can still put in a candidate was not voted for by the majority, which is
Right.
Yeah, the Constitution basically makes it clear that the states can choose how to assign their electoral votes. They don't specify how.
Okay, so there's been mumblings that because Donald Trump is, again, while a popular candidate, he's a very divisive candidate. If you don't like Donald Trump, you really don't like Donald Trump. That, and again, since Hillary won the popular vote, that a lot of people in the Electoral College may actually go against the Donald Trump vote. A lot of people are actually calling for that. And do you lot think that goes against American democracy, or do you lot think that's fair, or do you lot think that's justified, or what's any thoughts?
I think it's highly unlikely.
Yeah, I agree.
It's only happened once in 180 years or so. Yeah, I believe that's it. Somewhere around there. It's not something that happens. It would be nice if we switched away from the Electoral College and had something that was actually more demonstrative of the ideals of all of the Americans rather than based on where you live. But for this particular election, I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, the problem with it is trying to get a country to change an election system that keeps the big people in power is very difficult.
It's
Like
like
when-
getting Congress to approve congressional term limits.
Yeah, it's like when the UK tried to change our election system, the 2 big parties went against it and it didn't go through because they wouldn't get power. So trying to remove the Electoral College is going to be a very, very difficult thing to do.
It's hard to
However,
put
there is
very
a
much.
way.
I'm
So I was
sorry,
going to say,
didn't-
there's actually a way for states to reform this, and there's a campaign that's been going for like a couple of decades. The idea being that big states, they can choose how to assign their electoral votes, and if a number of states change their assignment to only give their votes to the person that gets the popular vote, then that would change the election dynamics, and it wouldn't require constitutional changes or changes within Congress or federal government.
The big problem with trying to assign some importance to this popular vote turnout is that it represents a decline compared to 2012. both Democrats and Republicans received less votes in all than they did in the previous cycle. It's just that the Democrats happened to lose more than the Republicans.
Well, I know there was also the thought, in the area that I grew up, as I said with my introduction, it was highly conservative. I grew up in South Central Pennsylvania, which, if you've never seen an election map of Pennsylvania, it's pretty hilarious. The entire thing is red, apart from 2 blue dots on either side for Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. The rest of it, very conservative. And any other Democrats that lived there really had the mindset that it doesn't matter if I vote because I'm going to be so overpowered by all of the Republican votes around here. And to be honest, it was actually true. You could not overpower those votes no matter what you did. So that discourages a lot of people with this current system from going and voting, which just exacerbates the issue.
Yeah, that's why turnout in so many states was so low. I think the largest turnout I saw was 68% of a state because if you vote in Texas for Democrat, your vote, you might as well have not gone ahead with a vote because Texas has never gone blue. And the same with California, it's never gone red. So if you're in California or Texas and you know how the game works, you're not going to want to put your vote in at all for any area of your state because your vote's just not going to matter. So
both states used to go the other way, just to be clear. It's just in least last few decades they're pretty much stuck one way.
Yeah.
You know, voter apathy is quite an interesting thing to talk about, obviously, because neither candidate was very liked. That's no surprise. Yet, turnout-wise, a lot less Democrats turned out than Republicans.
Yeah.
So, Hillary seems to be more disliked within her party than Trump.
Well, I think it's also important to look at the way that the polls were reporting, and the degree of confidence that this was not going to happen may have strongly discouraged particularly voters that were in kind of unexpected swing states that kind of flipped by small margins. That it may very well have been maybe sort of similar to y'all's Brexit problems.
Don't remind
That's
me.
what I
I'm
was
having
saying when it
flashbacks
happened. Like, yeah, that's what reminded me. Like, when the morning when I heard the news, I was like, this is Brexit all over again. This is just literally the same thing. They said with Hillary that she had a 3-point lead on the polls, and then suddenly, oh no, the not really reasonable party won. So, yeah.
I mean, that to a certain extent, that could be because of the way polling works, where people don't necessarily want to admit that they're voting for someone that has been tarred as perhaps racist or sexist or otherwise.
If you say to a poll creator that you're voting Trump, there's the chance that people are going to label you a racist, a sexist, or a misogynist, or any other bunch of labels, and people are going to say different on the polls to what they're actually voting, since the vote is confidential. So,
yeah, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, and to be clear, many people that voted for Trump are not racist, sexist, or misogynist, right?
They're just people that wanted to vote for Trump and didn't want to vote for the other candidates. It's the polarization at the moment of if you voted for Trump, you're a racist. If you voted for Clinton, you're a whatever. You're a corrupt
criminal.
You want everyone in government to ruin you and delete emails. But the polarization of the thing is a massive factor of it. That everyone that votes is an individual rather than everyone voting is left or right.
Speaking forensically, that's what killed us big time. I had so many unwarranted accusations thrown at me by people who used to be my friends that I was a Putinist saboteur or an anti-vaxxer or whatever, just because I didn't agree with the prevailing train of thought. And now look at where we are.
Well, to actually pull it back to Brexit, it's like with the Leave and the Remain camp, people are being put against each other again. Like, Remainers are being put like, yeah, you traitors of the country and you should just deal with it. And Leavers are like, yeah, fucking racist bullshit stuff again. So, I don't know, it sort of has some parallels here.
You see, that's actually what bothers me most about like both Brexit and this, is it causes, intentionally or not, it does cause a very us and them attitude. Which is
there's
very
so many
divisive.
people that have gone out, like when there's been women that have voted for Trump, people going, how can you respect a woman's rights if you voted for Trump when Trump said he'd grab women by the pussy, when people were voting for Trump because they don't want to vote for Clinton or don't want to vote for anybody else. They want to vote for Trump. So
Well, if the demographics on the Trump and Clinton vote was quite interesting because it was also about 50-50 on white males. Then on white females, it was also 50-50, which surprised a lot of people. But then on the Hispanic vote, was it the Hispanic vote, the Asian vote, and the African American vote? It was pretty much full Clinton. Like 90%.
Yeah, it was for black. It was 88% voted Democrat. For Hispanic, Latino, 65% Democrat. Asian, 65% Democrat. White was 58% Republican.
You see,
for the exit polls.
But you see, I find this interesting because obviously there is something about Trump that people find not necessarily gelling with minority groups in the United States. However, while he's had a lot of criticism for misogynistic comments and, possibly racist comments, it seems to be that only the racist comments have stuck, not the misogynistic comments, obviously, because the white female vote was still 50-50, and that's kind of... Any of you have thoughts on why that is?
Boy who cried wolf. Misogynist is one that was levied against me quite a lot, and it's just not true. The main thing I had against Hillary Clinton was her environmental platform, just not strong enough. And the thing I always got in response was, "Oh, you're a misogynist, you just don't want a woman in it." Meanwhile, I was very supportive of Stein, so I don't see how that makes me a misogynist.
It is that, isn't it? A lot of gender was brought into it, and there was a lot of name calling.
Yeah.
They basically went for the full intersectional strategy minus class. They worried about everybody else in an intersectional model of oppression except for the lower classes. And you just can't do it without them.
It's a very strange thing. I mean, at the end of the day, I won £200 because I bet on Trump as a joke. So,
if I was old enough, I would have fucking bet on Trump, but it didn't. That's the only thing I'm annoyed about. I didn't get money back.
Honestly, why do you think then? And why do you think that while a lot of sort of minority race groups went with Clinton and were clearly offended enough by Trump to not even consider or his policies or platform or whatever, whereas a good 50% of white female voters weren't offended by a lot of the equally probably problematic comments or accusations against Trump, much like racially motivated comments, shall we say? Even though really he's probably said less racially motivated comments. It's more of a.
Is it the case though that I mean I don't think that this support is unusual compared to past elections. If basically you put everyone in a voting booth and didn't tell them who the candidates were and just asked them to vote on party lines, you'd still expect white females to
well,
to
this
be,
is it.
So that it's not even necessary. It could be. You could argue that none of the disparaging comments had any effect, and this just sort of fits along the way that demographics have tended to vote in the past several elections.
I think it's also the severity of like how he'd implement it, because he said he'd implement the wall and he'd deport Muslims and prevent Muslims coming in, but he didn't say anything about he'd affect women and make women earn less or stuff like that. So I don't think women were, as was said, like a Republican Democrat, just regular vote is probably a part of it. But I think it's because he said he was going to do things to the minorities and like building the wall and doing stuff like that, but he wasn't going to do anything to the woman. He just said some comments about women, so it was much more a political thing than a person thing, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It was more of a
that's
past
if you're going.
thing.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you can go. It's fine.
That's if you're only going for just Trump and just Hillary. A lot of the, I guess, anti-female sentiments were coming from Pence, and specifically his views on women's healthcare and abortion and that sort of thing. Whereas Trump, he had a few, but he flip-flopped a lot with those sort of comments, and a lot of the other things that he said, as Katie says it sort of overpowered his comments of sexism, the regulations that he wanted to put in place that made that us versus them mentality. Whereas with women, it was just the disparaging comments, not with the policy backing it up.
And, well, this is the thing. A lot of people who, a lot of people in the media, it was a big deal about his comments, specifically, and that was one of the things that people were saying, people aren't going to vote for him because of his comments. That was one of the huge talking points, that people aren't going to vote. He said this horrible thing. Oh, no one's going to vote for him now. And that's why I think a lot of people were so confident. But clearly that didn't matter.
Yeah.
I
think, yeah.
Go on.
That was... I saw like, there was a thing that someone showed that when they asked people about it was like a word cloud of, like, what people associated with the candidate. When they were asked Trump, it was some said racist, some said sexist, some said misogynist. But for Clinton, everyone went liar, untrustworthy. So much more people were locked onto one big idea than Trump with some minor feelings of it. So while Trump had some things he said that put people against him, Hillary had that one big thing that a lot of people associated with her.
And if you think there might have been a tactic...
I would also say, a lot of...
Go on.
I was just going to follow up that a lot of Trump's comments that were highlighted were essentially off-the-cuff comments that were specifically designed to get a specific group to vote for him. Not necessarily what he perhaps might believe. And there's a certain argument that was made by people that like, oh, he's only saying that to get votes, therefore I can vote for him. He's not meaning that in his heart.
A lot of people...
I'm not saying I believe that.
Well, I noticed a lot of people did say that. I had a long conversation with a sort of white lower middle class, sort of like in the mid to late 40s Trump supporter on Twitter, small town, and it was the same sort of stuff you hear from a lot of that kind of the Trump rhetoric and all that. The whole small town idea, the factories closed, minimum wages and keeping up. A lot of immigrants are coming into town. She feels they're taking all the jobs away that would normally go to her family or whatever, and she can't support this. And at the end of the day, I think what a lot of people fail to realize is when they do talk about obviously Trump voters and Clinton voters, and say it was mentioned before, people throwing names around calling Trump supporters racist or whatever. That the majority of them aren't. They are just in a situation where that appeals to them, much like a lot of Democrats. And that's, I think, what a lot of people fail to realize still, because there's still a huge amount of back and forth in that empathizing with the general voter, not the vocal. I mean, it's like YouTube comments. You can't, the vocal minority. You can't look at the r/the Donald frickin' crowd and go, that is every Donald Trump voter.
Because that's just an echo chamber of people.
God.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. It is an echo chamber of people, and it is the vocal minority, and it's very hard to oversee, to see past that. And again, even with Clinton, it's very hard to see past the sort of very kind of, a lot of people found it like very PC and very, what's the word? Establishment and very, very feminist. A lot of people couldn't see past that.
She didn't want to change a whole lot of what was happening. She just wanted to keep the status quo of things. Whereas Trump was just like, let's shake it up, let's change everything, let's make it better for everybody.
Well, this brings me on to the next point I want to discuss. Obviously, Trump did want to shake things up, and people often will vote for change regardless of the change. It's the whole... It's like a comic. It's like, I want change, and he gets a baseball bat, and he smashes his house, and goes, oh no. And a lot of it was suggested about Bernie Sanders, whether Bernie Sanders would have been able to win. And a lot of people, when that was brought up the sort of gender card and that. And it's not about the gender card. It is purely about the Bernie Sanders is a lot more politically left-leaning. He's a lot more...
Even Elizabeth Warren would have been a better choice than Hillary Clinton. There's probably literally no woman in the Democratic Party who would have been a worse choice than Hillary Clinton. We literally ushered in the most unlikable candidate we've had in decades.
Well, this is it. She was seen to be very unlikable, even though, in a lot of ways, there's not really that much wrong with just what she's saying. And much like Trump, she doesn't come out and really say that many bad things, but it is just that untrustworthiness. It's this behind the scenes stuff, and people don't trust this politician of 30 years. Oh, she's got ties, and it's this kind of very, I wouldn't say it's conspiracy theory, but it's kind of that mentality of distrust of power, isn't it?
Going back
is that going to be different with any career politician, though? I guess just out of, I mean, I agree that she's probably the most polarizing of any of the Democratic candidates, but I would argue that's probably more of the result of just a long history of being in the public sphere rather than necessarily something about her character.
Right. I mean, I was going to say, just the Republicans have known that she's the obvious candidate for the last 8 years, and they've spent a lot of effort. If you look at the Benghazi inquiry that's wasted millions and millions of dollars, it is essentially, muckraking. That's what it was. Almost all of it was just looking for dirt that they could use against Hillary.
And yet she did have that extensive political history, and there's a lot of just general distrust of politicians.
Yeah, it was
so
the big
a lot of
change
people were like, let's get a businessman who's not a politician, who's not corrupt like a politician, and bring them in and have them make the change.
Well, here's the question though. A lot of people, as I say, brought up the fact that Bernie might have been able to win against Donald Trump because he was more about change and he was more about the progressive attitude. But if this distrust of politicians is there, do any of you think that would have made a difference?
I think more people viewed Bernie not as a politician and more as sort of, it was if it had been Bernie versus Trump, I think it would have been big change one way versus big change the other way. Because Bernie wasn't seen as more a politician; he was more seen as like he'd done the civil rights movements in the past. He's done things like that, and he is seen much more likable because he was less well known than what Hillary was. Because Hillary's been around since Bill Clinton was in office, and the association with Bill Clinton is that whole corruption line, as was said. It's the fact that Clinton is a figurehead of corrupt politics, whereas Bernie would have been a change, Trump would have been a change, and it's what change people would have gone for, rather than people who want change versus people who like the status quo.
As somebody who rallied for the working class and for the millennials and for all of that, I feel like he would have, with people my age, early 20s, or young voters, I know a lot of them said, I'm not going to vote for Hillary because I wanted Bernie, or I'm going to write him in. So if we had had him, I never heard anybody say that if Bernie gets in, I'll write in Clinton. There wasn't that sentiment. So he probably would have had a bit more of a chance. I don't know that it would have been enough, seeing the numbers right now, but better than Clinton is my thought.
He would have brought a lot of independence to the table, which would have been very helpful in terms of the turnout we needed to win this cycle. I don't know if he could have done it, but anything would have been better than what we went with.
I don't think he would have done any better with, the working classes, middle America, because, he's basically labeled a socialist, and socialist means communist to insert in many parts of the country.
But at the same time, he's still massively popular in the Northwest Kingdom of Vermont, which is just Tea Party territory, if you can imagine such a thing happening in Vermont. So he can, appeal to those working class types that, the mill closed and they're out of work and, those roughneck types. He does have a way of reaching those people, and I think that would have helped a lot.
I think he could have gotten a decent number of the votes that went third party. I think he could have managed to grasp some of those and gain that way. Maybe not just taking from the Republican votes that happened, but definitely from the third party, which was far more turnout than expected and wasn't the time to do that, really. Yeah. I mean, I respect people's ability to vote for whoever they want. They can vote third party if they want to. That's their choice, but it really wasn't the time for protest votes for those of them that did do it just as a protest vote.
Well, it's never time for a third party vote. It's
protest vote. I think the protest vote was more because if you look at the two candidates, it's I don't like Clinton, I don't like Trump, that's why they protested it. If it was Bernie, I feel like he would have taken all the people that were against Trump and sort of built it up, whereas the people that were against Trump weren't necessarily for Clinton, so the third parties may have come out of a strew of people who didn't like Trump and then didn't like Clinton. So it's whether people would have gone didn't like Trump and liked Bernie.
It's worth noting it depends on your state as well. I know some people have said about the idea that if they were in a swing state or they were in a battleground state, they wouldn't have protest voted with the third party. They would have just voted for Clinton. But since they were in a state that was pretty strong, Republican or Democrat, they just used that vote to try and get a third party up for the next election.
Let me look at the the turnout for the swing states.
Well, that's just like the big problem with there's like first past the post system anyway. Like hold on, UK is like a country with first past the post as well, right?
Yeah, sadly.
Yeah, so I am the only one that represents a system of not first past the post.
Whoa, Ireland.
Hello, welcome to the Netherlands.
Excuse me.
Hey, you're in the UK, so.
Fuck you.
Okay. Netherlands, it's not first past the post, it's just one man, one vote. What that sort of means is that we have a lot of different parties, and that does give like a mess for making coalitions. It is not ideal, but it's better because you feel like your vote actually matters. And I actually have like a post from Arches Netherlands. I can like post it here, but I don't think it matters, but it shows like if we had first past the post, it would also be sort of a two-party system with like the Liberal Party, like the Dutch Liberal Party, being the leading party, and that wouldn't really work out that well. So I don't know. It's just such a shame that the vote really doesn't matter in the US and the UK. Like, when I vote, I feel like I'm doing it for something.
So I would say that in Maine, the state of Maine actually passed a single transferable vote system this time around. So that means they will have
STV.
Yay! What always gets me is that America was founded after mathematicians had analyzed voting systems and basically said, this is how you do a voting system. It can't be, doesn't have negative consequences. They somehow didn't get that message.
What I really like, I live in Maine right now, if that wasn't obvious, is we don't have the Electoral College, so your votes matter a lot more. So we have decent voter turnout. There's a decent number of campaigning going on in the state, and we just now voted in the tier voting by a decent margin, so there's going to be a more representative candidate from now on. Hopefully. I think a decent part of that was due to our governor, who got in from a split Democratic vote. He's been called the mini Trump, and has caused hell the past few years.
I'm imagining a little kid with a little Trump wig on now.
So yeah.
I can run a state.
It's like we went through this on a state level already, and now it's leaning much more liberal, much more let's get the popular vote, let's get everybody's vote to actually matter a lot more. And I'm hoping that as a whole, the United States will kind of switch over to that if they're going to be in this similar situation but on a larger scale.
Yeah, going back to what Matt said about the turnout for people if they're in swing states rather than set ones. For the swing states in this election, which was like, that was New Hampshire, they had 70% turnout for their people. In Michigan, they had a turnout of 65%. Then in the ones that were going to be definite red or definite blue, in Texas, they only got about 50%. And in California, I think they got 45%. So it definitely shows that if you are in a swing state, you think your vote counts more and you're going to vote rather than not voting, because the ones that were definitely staying blue, their turnout is like 20% lower than the ones that were a flip. So
wow, that's quite a difference.
I mean, Hawaii had 30% turnout.
Jesus.
Ouch.
That's the only reason I broke with the party, is because Illinois is so safe. My vote truly does not matter.
And it is a sad system in a country which does value democracy so much that a lot of people do feel like the vote doesn't matter. And it's all well and good for Obama to come out and say you don't feel like your vote doesn't matter, but for a lot of people it really doesn't, because of the way the voting system works.
That's the same with the UK. I live in a state that's never been Labour, and if I vote Labour, my vote is practically pointless because I've never been in a Labour constituency. I've always been Conservative,
Well,
so our turnout in our constituency is practically apocalyptic.
Well, it's interesting in the UK because I notice in the US, even states which are pretty heavily Republican, it's like a 60% thing. It's not.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like an A. But I know there are a lot of constituencies in the UK which are 80-90% for one party. I know in Liverpool it is incredibly Labour Party, to the point where I think last election in my constituency that I was in, it was 80% to Labour or something really, really high. And it does really promote the idea that, and I suppose because people feel like the vote doesn't matter, they don't vote, and then it makes their win even bigger, and every time it's a sort of self-perpetuating cycle.
Then it removes the legitimacy of the candidate, and the whole democracy idea is thrown around of if it's properly democratic, and that's the main problem with first past the post is if less people turn up, the leader is less representative of the country as a whole.
I think a bigger issue with the whole "my vote doesn't matter, I'm not going to turn up" thing is people only think about the presidential vote when it comes to that. But we had a lot of Senate seats, a lot of House seats, some governors, and many policies going through this round. And people didn't turn up because they thought their vote didn't matter for the presidency only.
Weed was legalized, though.
Votes.
Weed was legalized in 3
Yeah,
states.
in California,
Yeah.
Let's get stoned in
About
Cali,
time.
hooray.
Oh, you can come to the Netherlands. I mean, hey.
That's true.
Yeah,
the big
California.
issue now, is that everything is controlled by Republicans. There is not a split anywhere, so there isn't really a check and balance that we need of any sort of split. Everything
for
is
some
controlled.
things they still need 66%
Yeah.
supermajorities for many things. And also, let's be clear, many of the things that Trump was saying on the campaign trail are actually against what was previously Republican policy. So he may not be able to get anywhere with some of his claims or ideas.
Which is why a lot of people thought that the GOP wouldn't let him get the vote. Is they thought the GOP would block him as the candidate early on, so they didn't take his threat as legitimate.
I find it interesting that one of his things that he kept banging the drum on was NAFTA, which is actually a George Bush Sr. policy.
It is. Well, this actually brings me on to the sort of next thing I wanted to bring up. Was practicality of sort of everything they said they were going to do. One of the criticisms...
Nothing is ever practical on the campaign trail.
Well, no, but there is...
Everything is possible, but...
There's some things that are a bit more impossible. I mean, one of the big criticisms about it was a criticism I had, even though I do have a lot of respect for Bernie Sanders, is that due to the political nature of the United States, a lot of the things he would want to get passed wouldn't get passed. A lot of the things he'd want to enact wouldn't be able to get enacted. And one of my worries with that is obviously, for example, if Bernie got elected, let's say, and he got in and people were very excited for him to change things, then realize that he can't really change that much due to the political nature of the country, and then they all lose faith in the movement, I suppose.
Well, I was going to say, let's be clear, because of the, slow pace of progress in Congress, the last 8 years or so, Obama has passed a record number of executive orders to pass laws that he couldn't otherwise get past Congress. And literally within the first hour of Trump arriving in the White House, he can override every single one of those if he chooses.
That's one of his first 100 days thing. I think it's one of the first days he wants to abolish every single executive order that Obama passed.
There was a thing about Obamacare. Trump says he's going to dismantle Obamacare as soon as he gets the presidency.
Now, this again brings up the practicality argument of, okay, obviously Trump has had an attitude of say what he wants and kind of do what he wants. But there's a very big difference between campaigning to be the president when you're a businessman and actually being the president. And I am wondering, and I am quite curious to see if his team will go, okay, Donald, you got to take a step back here. you know.
Have you seen his cabinet? The cabinet that he's building right now.
Well, even then, even with that, it is more. For example, this one thing Obamacare on the first day. Obviously, he wants to replace it with something better. That's what he said. He said, "I want to replace it with something better." He hasn't detailed what that is.
And I would love to see
He
it.
did say he wants to replace it with like a. It's an account.
The health savings account. I believe he wants to increase the minimums, and then he wants to get rid of interstate limitations, because right now your insurance is restricted to your own state, which is a valid complaint about the way that the things are set up right now. But
it's not shit and pepper.
But it'll be interesting to see whether or not, just because the Republicans in Congress have been kind of champing at the bit to repeal this for such a long time, it'll be interesting to see whether the idea is to put a replacement in right away, or it's to, hey, yeah, let's try and get this removed, and then maybe we'll work on healthcare at a later point in time.
Well, obviously that is quite concerning, because if he does remove it without first putting in a replacement, obviously a lot of people are going to lose healthcare. But this is why I'm thinking it's just possible someone in Trump's team may go, okay, Donald, I know you want to do this right away, but you're gonna fuck up a lot of people if you do it right away. Probably put in the replacement and remove, phase it out. And
there's a bunch of things Trump said he was going to put in that couldn't economically at all happen. That's not, like, even if his party was all behind him and he managed to get the vote of it actually happening, he can't do a bunch of things he promised, like, at all.
I mean, since we mentioned the health savings account, the way it sounds incredibly limiting on a per person basis. So the people who have much higher medical expenditures, who are only managing to get that sort of care because they have state and government and federal funded aid, will have a lot more trouble. There's a lot of disorders that people may have that their medications cost thousands of dollars, and if it's like an account limited basis, it's going to be impossible for them to pay for anything, and it'll just increase a bunch of debt and fuck over our medical system even more.
It's a very concerning attitude, I suppose, to come in and go, I'm just going to rip all this down. It's a very concerning attitude.
It's essentially he wants to rip down everything that was created and build up everything anew, and doing that in 4 years, bringing us back 8 years, is not feasible.
Yeah, because the repercussions that's going to have through the health profession are going to... Because you guys have only just changed over to Obama, the healthcare system's only just gone over to Obamacare and getting used to that. If he takes that out and throws in something new, you're going to have to get used to that, and if the next president takes that out and throws that back in, the medical system's going to be thrown around left and right.
Well, it's
and even if you have Obamacare and Medicaid, and they want to mess around with Medicaid entirely as well, if you have those, you're still denied in a lot of places. I know I have insurance that isn't Medicaid, but it sounds similar to it. And if I mention, when they ask me if I have any insurance, if I mention the name of it and they're not paying attention, they'll say, oh, we can't help you here, and send you away, because they only take insurance that'll cover a lot, whereas right now it just doesn't, and they want to make it even worse.
No, that is. It's kind of like... It's kind of like going, okay, we're going to build you better houses. I'm going to knock your houses down right now. You're not going to have anywhere to live for a couple of years, but it's fine, because I'm going to build you better houses. Without, build the house and then move. It's a concern. But again, that brings up, what do you think out of what he said he'll actually do when he gets into office? What do you think he won't do, let's say? Because he said a lot.
Well, I can say one thing he will do.
Deport every Muslim.
I just want to point out it was very telling how the stock markets plummeted overnight, but as soon as the U.S. markets opened, everything went back to business as usual. And I think that's what Trump's going to be. He's going to be another Republican president, just like any other we've had in the past 40 years.
He's going to be very friendly to business, and I'm going to do well under him, because I'm a white dude and I get decent amounts of money, right? Everyone else, I don't know.
Yeah, the minorities, how are they going to be affected by Trump doing his economic reform, whatever he decides to do, what of the economy, what changes is he going to do? yeah, they're going to affect the white straight because that's what Trump is, but how well is he going to benefit the every other part of the population is a question.
Well, I mean, the economic growth hasn't been making it to the bottom to begin with. It's just going to keep being more of the same. That's why the Democrats lost this one. They promised change and they failed to deliver on it.
Right, I mean, one thing that's interesting is last time around we had Mitt Romney as the Republican, and he promised, one of his campaign promises was to bring unemployment down to 5% during his term. And it's now 4.9%. I mean, the thing about economic incentives or whatever, the way the economy has been managed by Congress and by Obama and whatever, is that they've essentially tried to get these big macro figures looking better, and that has really meant doing a lot of work in cities at not necessarily the expense of rural areas, but they haven't really spent much effort in these rural areas, because if you're going to improve these big macro measures, you need to focus on the places where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck.
Well, and similarly, we're in a position of trying to improve, rates of growth, and just we look at statistics like unemployment, we look at market indices, and then we also go, well, we're also holding down inflation. We're also very much encouraging people to not invest in corporate infrastructure, to not go out and take particularly risky ventures, but rather to invest that money and try and pass it off to someone else who will. The result being that it could be that the metrics that we're using to evaluate how healthy we are as, both on a macro and a micro level, are just not effective anymore, especially now that we have, the largest companies in the U.S. employing far fewer than kind of ever historically.
Yes, but the average voter can't eat Netflix or send their kid to college on Netflix. Exactly. I understand what you're saying, but it's still not paying dividends where the votes are, and that's the problem.
I believe we're absolutely in agreement. I think I think we're on the same page here.
Beyond this, I mean, if you look forwards, the most popular job in most of these states that voted red is driver. And, guess what everyone's talking about? Self-driving vehicles. Robots are literally going to come in the next decade and decimate much of this employment.
President 2020,
well, this
vote
is
for him.
This is it as well, because a lot of people, obviously, a lot of the people in rural areas who vote for Trump, one of the big complaints I heard was, our factory jobs have moved to China and India and wherever. And again, that is something that is already heavily automated. And it's not like those jobs, even if that manufacturing was brought back to the US, it's not like those jobs would come back. Due to the heavy automation.
I mean, look at the car production line. That's become practically robots now, and there's no way they can change that back, really. So,
yeah, there's a whole future economy transition that is just going beyond this simple election notion of building jobs and whatever. It's going to transform the world, and people need to be looking forward to how to make this as painless as possible.
Well, this brings up another Trump policy point I want to bring up, which I think is his most... I think it's the most damaging thing he's doing. It's one of the things he can probably most practically do, is his environmental policies.
No. That's an interesting topic. Yeah.
He does not believe in global warming. I watched all his vlogs the other day, and there was this one that he's talking about wind turbines, and he calls them windmills for the whole thing, which.
Oh no! Really?
Well, yeah, he thinks he's in the Netherlands. And so he says he was in Scotland. It's golf course, beautiful golf course. You should go visit it. It's a great golf course. It's in Aberdeen, beautiful golf course.
Best golf course.
And he says about how the Scottish government are planning to put wind turbines. He goes, they're horrible things, they're ugly things, they kill birds by the thousands.
Oh no, the birds.
No one in Scotland wants them, but the Scottish government are pushing them through. They want to fill the coastline with them. They're inefficient when the wind doesn't blow. They don't generate power. Like, no shit, John. No shit.
You know what? Everyone where my family lives, they are so proud of those darn things. We love them.
I get electricity through them, and it's so much cheaper. we pay so little for electricity because it's entirely wind powered here.
Well, this is it. Obviously, his argument was that, but his argument was, oh, we have to. He said you have to replace them every 5 years because they rust, and he was getting really visibly angry about it. He was going, they're ugly and they're sightly, and there's another video of him just like videoing literally the shadow of one on his golf course.
Yeah.
Clearly, he doesn't like them because they're unsightly on his golf course. But the thing at the end of the video he says was, he says that. I'm paraphrasing here very slightly, but wind turbines are the worst disaster to ever happen in Scottish history.
Well,
Oh my god.
let's look back.
That's like one of the people
Scott, do you
that's
have anything to say about that?
that's like one of the people who he's suggesting would take which position? His attorney general position, saying that before Obama came along, we didn't have any successful radical Islamic attacks on the United States. It's on that sort of level.
That's weird.
Dear. But
I don't know, to come sort of back on the environmental issues, because he's been like advocating to bring back coal mines and to get people back into coal working jobs. And
no,
it's like,
no.
what the hell?
To get clean coal.
Clean coal, yeah. Oh god, what the hell?
Despite
Sorry.
the intrinsic value of coal itself, can't.
Excuse me while I go cry over my degrees.
Well, this is the thing. Well, obviously, one of the things that many people said in the Trump campaign is a lot of people said in Brexit as well. We're sick of experts.
Oh, Michael Gove. So yeah, people are sick of experts. They don't want experts telling them how
And
to
you know
live their
what?
lives.
They are.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
People don't want the scientific thing saying climate change is a thing because they just don't want to hear it anymore. They want to go, it's fine, we'll work with it. It's
you
the
see,
thing with people.
Even
getting...
Gary Johnson accepted climate change was man-made.
Oh dear.
He's a
Gary
libertarian.
Johnson, wow.
See, this is the thing, though. This is the most damaging thing you can do, because obviously a lot of people keep talking about the sort of cultural impact of him, and obviously there's a lot of protests, and obviously there's a lot of the issues that happened with Brexit, where hate crimes increased significantly, and obviously
xenophobia on a rise, racism on a rise, hate crime on a rise.
And it is that is going to happen. There's no doubt that's going to happen. Maybe not directly because of Trump promoting it, but he still does promote that kind of environment where that can fester. Regardless of whether you think Trump's a racist or whatever, he does promote that environment exists within his group a lot more than it does in the Democratic Party.
Well, one thing that needs to be pointed out is even what the Democrats are proposing environmentally isn't even close to being good enough to save our species from near-term extinction.
Oh, that definitely is a process.
And this is something that the people are just going to have to lead on. We can't count on government, particularly capitalist governments, to solve this problem.
You see,
it's just not going to happen.
This is what concerns me, though, obviously, because Donald Trump said apparently, he said a lot of things, but someone sort of put them on a sort of list. He said he wants to replace the head of the EPA. He wants to get rid of the EPA. He wants to basically drop out of every green agreement with other countries. He wants to stop funding a lot of green initiatives. He wants to obviously, based on his vlogs, doesn't like wind power. Such a fucking little. Oh, it's ugly. Great, good. He supports fracking very heavily. Obviously, I think Clinton supported fracking as well, so that's not the same. But obviously, Trump basically wants to go no environmental protection at all. Reverse everything. Which the thing is, he can do that, which is concerning.
Well, considering how many Americans don't see climate change as a huge impact, I don't think a large amount of Americans are going to be opposed to that, because I think a lot of Americans either don't worry about the impact of climate change, don't believe in climate change, or have some other view that it's not as bad as people make it out to be. So I think he will probably be able to put that forward and not help the environment and bring back coal industry and fracking and making energy that way, because people prefer money over protecting the environment in that way.
I mean, he said he wants to completely abolish any limitations and regulations on carbon emissions, which is something that has helped us finally start to repair the ozone that we're destroying. But if a bunch of factories that he wants to bring back here start doing whatever they want with emissions, then it's just going to get worse and worse. And that's going to be a problem for a time when he's not president. It's going to be something that leaves a lasting impact. Our economy can recover from stuff, and certain other things can recover, but the environmental things are lasting impacts that just throwing more money at it isn't necessarily going to fix it.
Yeah, Owen Bradshaw just came up in the chat that he said he had a fracking earthquake in England, and that's not something that can really be healed if the next president comes in and works against fracking, because that's a lasting damage to the plates of.
Well, this is my concern. Cultural hatred and everything can obviously be resolved, even in the most extreme case of fucking Nazi Germany, where less than 100 years past that now, and
can I just say, we made it a whole hour, so good job, Matt.
Applause, everyone.
We didn't die.
Being Jewish, it was very, very difficult for me to resist the urge.
Wow, okay.
One of the interesting things I'd like to point out is the greatest reduction in fracking has largely been because of OPEC deliberately keeping oil prices low to sabotage the US oil market. I think that's funny that they've done more for, anti-fracking than anything else.
What's also scary is that some of the possible cabinet members are people like oil and gas moguls in the United States, so people who will gain money benefit not if they get rid of those regulations to help themselves. Isn't there a conflict of interest there? Isn't there something we can do to prevent that? Because that's just ridiculous that somebody who is making money off of blocking the trade agreements that would bring in overseas oil, natural gas, that sort of thing, and lead everybody to their own product.
Well, this is sort of a question I have here, because obviously the Republican Party in general isn't a believer of climate change, really. It's not it's not every Republican politician doesn't believe climate change, but as a party, they generally don't. But obviously, Donald Trump, very against climate, doesn't believe it. So, obviously...
Well, although he might be saying that just to get voted.
Well, he might be. He might be. But again, from watching his vlogs, which were made like in 2011, where he just gets really pointlessly angry at wind turbines, I don't... it's one of those things that I'm starting going, yeah, you know what, it's one of those things which I fully believe.
I'm glad America elected Alex Jones. It's great. It's brilliant.
Well, that, and he's got Pence, and I know when Pence was mentioned earlier, the chat went crazy because he is the one to worry about, and he is an adamant climate change denier.
Amongst other, undesirable qualities.
Yes, he is going to be a big driving force. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, Trump, awesome, he says all of these wonderful words we want to hear, but really the people who are going to be pulling the strings know how to put those policies through, know how politics work. Those are the ones that are going to be causing a lot of the issues.
Is there any way, right? As the Senate is now Republican controlled, and as the
still is
Republican controlled, and the House of Representatives is now Republican controlled.
Still is.
I thought, were they both Republican controlled previously?
They were both Republican controlled. Basically, 2 years after Obama came to office, they both flipped, I think.
Oh, well, there we go. But now, obviously, full red government.
Supreme Court soon. He has 3 of them that he can suggest.
Well, this is it. Now, so, in that scenario, right, where basically the entire controlling government essentially doesn't believe in climate change, how do people, the citizens, stop that? Because it's not like climate change. Obviously, even though a lot of Republican candidates go, "We don't believe it," it's a pretty objectively factual thing. It's like if you don't, fine, you don't want to listen to scientists. That's fine, but it's still real.
Ignore the experts, but still.
Okay,
just notice.
You guys remember the Army of Ghosts episode of Doctor Who, where Torchwood is
intensely,
and the Doctor just is, he says, "Don't probe the void. It's bad. Bad things are going to happen." And then he gives up and just says, "Fine, do what you want. I'll just watch, whatever." That's what we need to do, I think, at this point. As crazy as that sounds, we need to just let the Republicans do exactly what they want to do. And
you mean
I
like in
wouldn't
Kentucky?
I mean, like, let them shoot themselves in the foot.
It's not just shooting
doesn't
themselves in
work.
the foot, though. It's shooting the climate in the foot and the face
I
and the
don't
body.
believe
And the
they could last 2 to 4 years if we really let them do what they wanted to do. I think they'd fuck things up so badly that they'd jumpstart a socialist revolution overnight.
The thing is, you say this, right? But I mentioned this woman earlier, I spoke to her, but she was from a small town with coal industry, and she was complaining that the steel plant in her town, where her husband used to work, had to fire a lot of employees due to environmental regulations. And from her perspective...
And not because the steel was being bought from China?
That as well.
China.
That was one...
Not saying that I know anybody that bought a bunch of steel from China.
Oh, God, what... I mean,
China.
This was one of arguments. Obviously, that's the opinion of a lot of people in the United States who aren't necessarily scientifically minded, which is a lot of people, and that's not necessarily... It's not a thing... I mean, it'd be nice if more people were scientifically minded, because science is pretty objective. Science doesn't generally choose ideologies or anything. It is just,
No, but to be fair, scientists do.
They do.
It's absolutely always valid to be skeptical.
It is,
but as far as institutions to distrust, it probably does not make as much sense as others.
But obviously, I forgot what I was saying now.
Oh, Matt, you prepared so well.
I didn't.
Well done.
You know what's bad, right? I wing it.
Really?
I have a vague idea in my head, and I don't even write anything down. I really probably should.
No, I had something in mind that we could talk about. It's like the effect of everything on Europe, maybe. Because we have some European
I was just going to talk about...
Anticipate a lot of annoying celebrities coming to visit.
I remember now. Oh yeah, the steel factory.
Steel!
There we
Steel.
go. Most
Pokemon
people see environmental regulations. They don't see the impact, because obviously they see, climate change. I don't think the weather's just fine here,
Yeah.
And so they see that there's no change they could notice, and they see that it's just stopping jobs, and they go, it's not a good thing. Because from a practical perspective on the ground, of course you'd have that perspective. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's whether it directly affects you or if you watch it affecting everything as a whole. It's whether... Because if they don't believe it and stuff and it doesn't directly affect them, then why would they... And if they haven't looked at the science, they don't trust the science, why would they believe that the climate change is happening? As much as they objectively should, whether they do or not, whether it's directly affecting them specifically is what I think a lot of people look at. It's a slightly selfish worldview to have, but a lot of people have it.
Yeah, with the climate change stuff, it's being shouldered off to the younger generations and the future generations and everything, because if for the older folks, they're not going to listen.
Solar power has really taken off. I hear that solar power is even taking off amongst many, ardent Tea Partyers, because it is essentially getting your power generation independently from the government.
For now, but what I'm wondering is, with all of their defunding of alternate and clean energy, is it going to affect that? Are we going to have to resort to just the private funding, private sector for all of that sort of thing? Or are we actually still going to be able to get some federal aid for wind power, solar power, even going nuclear power?
Well, keep in mind that with solar becoming cheaper, there is at some point that it becomes just economically infeasible to do anything else. Like if you get to a point of efficiency where it makes more sense to put funding in, you don't need economic incentives. You don't need the government to say, hey, we're going to try and pimp this cool new tech because we like the planet. It just becomes the intelligent purchase to make. And we are getting closer to that point. And so, even though things may dry up, we may be okay regardless.
Yeah, I mean, with the subsidies, it's absolutely financially a good bet, assuming you own a house.
Yeah, I'm currently renting. I'm not going to be able to afford a house anytime soon with Brexit fucking up my pay.
Well, this is an interesting thing. I notice it in the UK, at least. I notice a lot of new build. Pretty much every new build, at least in Liverpool, has had solar panels on all the houses by default. Because the government.
I've noticed that in my area as well. Every house that's getting built starts with a solar panel. You don't buy the solar panel; it's just part of the build.
Because the governments are very heavily subsidising them, and obviously it makes sense because if they don't use the power, it just goes into the grid.
Yeah, it makes the government money, and if it doesn't make the government money, it helps people power their homes.
Yeah, so
useful.
That generally doing something like the UK is doing stops the issue of say rental, because at that point. And obviously it's down to landlord and all this stuff, and it's just the US doesn't really have that culture.
No, it's a lot of the houses that are being built. It's big developments that are bought up, and they're large cookie cutter houses that get people to buy them, and then they can't actually afford all of their taxes and everything because they could only afford that down payment. There's pretty much no built-in solar panels immediately. That's on you to do it yourself.
The big issue I see environmentally, and I'm kind of studying solar, it's sustainable homesteading's my whole kick these days. The American lifestyle is just not sustainable at all. Not even close to it. And nobody wants to tell everyone else, hey, you can't keep living like this. Everyone's afraid of what'll happen. They want to tell other people what they want to hear, that everything's going to be okay, that we can take a gradual approach and slowly get to sustainability, but we have to take dramatic action now. And we can't count on the government, even if it had been won by Hillary. We can't count on them to solve this problem.
But it definitely helps. It definitely helps to have those big pushes of funding.
Well, the thing is, it's less necessarily about solving it, obviously, because even though Hillary might not have solved it, the problem is Trump. There's a distinct possibility that Trump may actually just cause irreparable environmental damage for the whole world for centuries.
Yeah.
If he does.
I highly doubt that.
Well, considering the population of the US.
I just think that it's too big for him to even screw up in 4 years.
I don't think he's going to push it back, push it badly back that much, but he's definitely not going to push it forward, is the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
We're on borrowed time already, and we have to do something drastic to change it. Trump being an idiot will cost us seconds, minutes at most.
Yeah, there is still definitely a large part of America that is, even if Trump goes, climate change isn't a thing, there's still a part of America, the science part, the people who believe in science, people who just view it as happening. There's definitely a part of America that goes, yeah, it's happening, we should probably do something about it. So I don't think Trump's going to be able to make the whole thing go completely apocalyptically out of control, but he's definitely not going to help it. The thing.
Oh no, he won't help at all, I'll admit that. But it's always had to come from the bottom up. This was never a problem that could be solved from the top down.
Well, if we want it to come from the bottom, then we have to make sure our education is still up to par. Because there's a lot of education reforms that they're trying to push as well, which will help fund private religious studies, will completely abolish the curriculum, the uniform curriculum that everybody's supposed to have, and let schools...
Common Core.
Common Core, that's it. It'll abolish that. It'll let states and schools choose what to teach their students, and we need to make sure that students are actually, and kids are brought up to know what's happening, and not just what their specific area wants them to hear is happening.
Yeah. You don't want to teach, because that's like slight indoctrination then. That's like people not being given outsider views and whether...
I know, states already have a lot of control over education.
Yeah.
In my school when I was younger, a very conservative area, they banned the teaching of anything other than abstinence. So no sex education whatsoever.
Hooray.
We had ridiculously high levels of pregnancies, of STDs, all of that sort of stuff, and the numbers go to show that doesn't work. We need to keep that sort of education. We need to have some regulation from the government level. We can't just trust small areas to decide what's good for people who are going to bring up the whole country.
Problem with that is how strong belief is in America, like the idea of beliefs that people have had for decades and centuries that people have got in America, because they're free speech things, that people don't want their beliefs to be squandered or limited by a massive thing keeping curriculum all the same. If the curriculum tries to teach one thing and it goes against the beliefs of that state in another way, then states are going to rebel against that, and the people with their strong beliefs are going to rebel against that. So
yeah, I mean,
that's a very limiting factor.
The argument that if states control what to teach, then it means we have 50 capabilities to brainwash can easily be turned around to say, well, if we have centralized control, then it means that there is one big government that brainwashes, and at least we'll have 50 different types of differently brainwashed people that grow up and can argue with each other, as opposed to.
You say you want 50 hive minds rather than one big hive mind.
Exactly.
It's not necessarily fully down to the whole brainwashing thing, but people do not always stay right where they were raised. We need to have at least some form of standardization that they're able to go other places and they're able to bring something there. Right now, our test scores based on the rest of the world are incredibly low. Obviously, what we're doing right now isn't working, but I think what they're proposing is also not going to work.
Well, this brings up the question, though. Obviously, a lot of people in the United States have an isolationist attitude, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's sort of like, I want to live in this, I want to live here, I want to just go away. Let me do what I'm not going to go away from here, just stay away from my place. It's my place, my tree place. And is obviously one of the big tenets of America is freedom, right? And the freedom to be able to do that is a very American thing, to be able to just go to your little corner and close yourself off and ignore everyone. Now, having, obviously, that standardization is very good for the world. I think it's very promoting of globalization, it's very promoting of just helping the world and everyone around it. But does that go against the initial tenets of America? And is it their right, really? If it's all well and good us saying, teaching, you should be teaching sex education, you should be teaching evolution, you should, be teaching that climate change is a thing. It's all well and good us saying that, and obviously, objectively, they are probably all, the right things to do. But is it their right equally to be able to say, I don't want to do this, go away, where we're going to live in our little bubble, leave us alone in our little bubble?
They're allowed to, and there's regulations that allow that now with homeschooling and private schooling, and you can do that. It just isn't federally funded necessarily. So you have the right to have whatever form of education you want for your child.
But you do not have the right to not pay for public schooling that teaches in a way that opposes your views, is I think the argument that would be made from the other side. Is that creationists are required legally to subsidize the teaching of evolution right now, as it stands.
Yeah. The question is, with Trump, bring it slightly back to the election thing, what's Trump going to do to those people that have the isolationist view and the people that have the globalization view? What's Trump going to do to either side of the
He's very anti-globalization, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's very much, let's close off everything, let's close off trade,
America, make America great again, all the other ones.
He doesn't want to close off trade. He wants
with certain parties, right?
Well,
like China.
He said he's happy. I think he's more than happy to trade with China. He just, as far as I can tell, just wants to bring jobs from China that have, been taken away.
He wants to keep jobs in America. He wants to keep trade in America, factories in America, production in America, make America a big superpower.
But it's not necessarily that he wants to stop trade, because obviously trade is very important if you want to be a superpower.
Yeah.
He's said he's basically just happy to trade with anyone. His attitude, from watching his vlogs, as a businessman, he doesn't really care as long as it makes him money. Like, he spoke about him renting land to Gaddafi, right?
Yeah.
Rented a place to Gaddafi, and he basically took the money, said, I didn't let him use it, or I made it very hard for him to use it, and I gave the money to charity. And he said...
You mean to the Trump Foundation?
Probably.
Viva la Trump.
Nice charity.
but it's sort of that ideal of... he said you take advantage of people. It doesn't matter if they're good people or bad people, but you take advantage of people, and you give that money to charity. That's what he said. It's like, okay, right.
Yeah.
And a lot of his other blogs basically express the idea of, all about sort of just everything happening in the Middle East over the past 5 years. And, he even said about South Korea, so why should we protect South Korea if they're not paying us? And why did we go in and stop Gaddafi if they're not going to give us half of their oil? And it's all... He wants payment for all this stuff. He expects payment, and he's got very much of an attitude of less... Let's come together and help each other for the betterment of the world, and more of America for hire.
But didn't that whole thing of
more profit-based,
taking over places, didn't that whole attitude cause the current Middle East, like after World War II?
Yeah.
Let's put in our own kings and then take all the money, and oh wait, there's a revolution in Iran.
This is what he said.
And then suddenly Israel.
He very specifically said the victor takes the spoils, so we should get the oil. It's like, oh dear.
Yeah, thing is with that though, with this is slightly related. With the Mexican president wants to do negotiations with Trump, and with how Trump's viewed Mexico, what's he going to do with bringing stuff to America and doing that? Since what you said with like Gaddafi and stuff, is he going to do the same with Mexico, one of their nearest neighboring countries? How is he going to view with the Mexican president and negotiations with them?
I think the thing with Trump, as I think we've discussed, is that literally 90% of what he says is just smoke.
Yeah. Win the vote, and then it's like the Lib Dems.
Well, obviously, he still holds those core values. His attitude towards other countries, and his attitude towards trade, his attitude towards the victor is still a core value of his. But his actual actions of that is I think, significantly overblown. Well, not even overblown. It's significantly over-exaggerated to get people riled up. Which I think might have been a tactic for him, just say as many things as he can. And that's to say, I think it was mentioned before, wasn't it, the idea that Clinton, everyone hooked to the idea that she was a liar and she was untrustworthy.
Yeah, and Clinton didn't say much to try and dispel that, whereas Trump, he actively said stuff, whereas Clinton didn't actively do stuff.
Yeah, but Trump basically said so many things that nobody really had time to focus on one thing, and then everyone just stopped caring.
Which one of these 100 different things he's promised do you want to focus on the most?
I get messages about him, he's going to offer all this new money to NASA. It's like, yeah, because you were behind in the polls. That's why he was making these promises at rallies. Right? I don't think there's going to be a huge ton of money coming to NASA.
Well, this is kind of what concerns me about him, because how much of what he says do you believe?
Will he be a run-of-the-mill president, or will he be a revolutionary president?
I think when you get access to the daily CIA briefings, that changes you as an individual and as a candidate. Yeah. It certainly did with Obama. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up backpedaling from a lot of the things that he said in the campaign.
It's how much he wants to use his position of power to actually do what he wanted. Whether he'll actually, once he gets into power and sees the power he actually holds and gets that, whether he'll go through what he promised doing.
It's like what Abraham Lincoln once said, adversity, I'm paraphrasing here, but adversity is not that big of a deal, but if you really want to test somebody's character, give them power.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see if Trump actually does what he wanted to do, or if he'll be a run-of-the-mill. He had the like with what the in the UK with what some parties have said in the past about what they've said and wanted to put in, and then when they've come in, they haven't put them in due to the circumstance. Whether Trump's circumstance will allow him to put in what he wants to put in and what he could put in and stuff like that. It's going to be a curious thing to see what he implements, what he removes, what he repeals, and what he does.
But until we have any sort of idea what's going to happen, the fear that's rampant right now is going to stay, and that's That's terrifying.
So it's harmful.
One thing the
fact that there's
current
so many people who are
administration
scared.
could do to assuage the fear, I'd say, is to start dismantling the massive Orwellian surveillance state they've been building for the past 15 years, just so the public knows that Trump won't get his hands on it in January.
And in the meantime, we have people who are making the videos saying that they're gonna be safe havens on YouTube that people can come to, like what Dan posted the other day and like Tom Scott have posted. So even if people are scared for that initial fear period, there are people people can go to and look to and actually still try and be comfortable.
It's all well and good, obviously, offering kind words of support, but at the end of the day, obviously, a YouTube video doesn't help.
Yeah, a YouTube video isn't a president in power.
Well, not even that, but it is... Obviously, a YouTube video doesn't stop you from being harassed on the bus for wearing you know.
Or having a knife pulled on you, as I read a story of.
It doesn't stop all of us who would regularly frequent things like gay clubs or groups like that from worrying about, can we still keep going on with our lives, or do we have to worry about just getting stabbed in the street when we're trying to walk home from a night out or something,
on
or
a personal thing,
wearing a hijab or something.
On a personal thing with the fear that's come out, being a tranny that's going to Tennessee in 2017, I've got that slight anxiety of how America will be feeling at that point, whether the fear will have dispelled and the xenophobia and racism will have dispelled from Trump getting in and emboldening the racists and emboldening the xenophobes, and whether the fear will still be there and the anxiety and the polarization of the two poles will be there, and I'll find out if I get stabbed in Tennessee and I'll report back.
We only
I don't think you can.
We only recently got a lot more trans rights, specifically here that I know of, living with one of my best friends who is in the process of transitioning. It took so long to be able to just change his name and change his gender on his birth certificate and his social security and everything. And going through that process was difficult, but much easier than it had been before.
Yeah.
And with the homophobia in the projected cabinet and vice presidency especially, it's terrifying, because if somebody who is younger just comes out to their parents or to somebody at school, or is even outed without their permission, they could be thrown into conversion therapy, and that has been proven not to work. It's proven to be damaging. And just the general feeling from people from the LGBT plus community was fear and anger and just uncertainty. And that I don't want that with a presidential election. I don't want that to be the main emotion that everybody's having.
Someone in the chat just said, and I quote, Trump isn't going to make stabbed trannies, dude, what the fuck. And the thing is, to a degree, you're right, but it's the environment Trump allows.
Like, look at the environment after Brexit. Brexit emboldened some racists and xenophobes who thought that everybody else was a racist and xenophobe because Brexit got voted by the referendum to happen. So, and you had hate crime on a rise, and xenophobia on a rise, and racism on a rise, and all that stuff on a rise from that. It's whether Trump has emboldened enough people to do that could be a possibility. I mean, it won't just happen in a massive amount of everyone gets injured, but it's whether there'll be cases of emboldening of the stigmatism against it, and whether people will actually be affected by that in negative ways like that.
He's not saying go out and stab a gay person. He is setting a standard of off-color comments that he's made, and off-color comments and just terrible policies that others have put forth, and is just making that a standardized, that's making it so it's not something terrible and just awful that they have said, and it's just making it, it's just a comment, it's just an offhand comment, it's fine.
Yeah.
Those comments do affect people, whether you like it or not, or whether you take part or not. And yet Trump didn't do that, and they were already like, but Trump he's created an environment where that can be encouraged and justified.
Yeah, and considering the fact he also creates an environment, considering his vice president's views that we haven't touched upon it, but I think it's common knowledge his views on LGBT situations. But it's the fact that the atmosphere he's in can create that. It's not that it will, it's that it can create that kind of negative air around America.
There's already a rise in hate crime. There's already a lot of people who are just like, stay home. If you are a minority, just stay home.
Yeah.
Go around in groups, just try to avoid any problems, especially in big cities right now.
Yeah.
Move to California, please.
They've got weed and everything there. It's great.
They've got weed. They've got rights. It's
That's
great.
all we
It's
need.
brilliant.
Maybe just go to
California
Netherlands
exit.
altogether. You know what I mean? Like, everything's better here.
Slight shortage on water, though, if I recall.
The only way that Maine is
that's
really
it.
connected to the rest of the continental United States is through a bridge to New Hampshire, so we're just saying, just cut the bridge and just push us into Canada. It's fine.
Yeah, might be better.
But see, this sort of stuff that's being encouraged, obviously, I've seen a lot of people, much like Brexit, where people call Bramonas, Bramonas complaining about the fact leaving the EU, and much like Brexit, the US presidential election was a very, very close vote, and even though obviously Trump won the Electoral College vote and Clinton actually got the popular vote, it was still a very, very small margin, an incredibly tight margin.
With less than 50% of the voters.
So you're in a situation with both Brexit and this, where basically 50% telling the other 50%, stop moaning, you lost.
They won by a hair.
Yeah, and it frankly doesn't matter. The process of democracy and the process of like the entire political system of England and America and, you know, most Western countries is the idea of, you know, if 50% of the population don't like something, they shouldn't shut up about it.
Especially since there's also the global impact that we're going to have.
Well, this brings to the next point about the idea of what is the global impact of all this stuff. Obviously, we've discussed the justification of the festering and the I guess what's the word? Oh, whatever.
I don't expect much foreign policy to change, to be honest.
Not much foreign policy, but we're talking about a worldwide, I guess, cultural shift in some way. Obviously, it's happened in the UK with Brexit. It happened in Australia.
I mean, you can talk about like the rest of Europe because I know the Netherlands, at least, Wilders, like the Party for Freedom, that's like sort of a more populist party that's been like getting more traction. It has been for a while, but like after Brexit, the main guy's been making a lot of statements about it. But then there's also other parties like the Alternative for Germany, like the other really right-wing populist party, and Marine Le Pen, but I forgot, like, I think she's from the National Front in France. Like, those have been really getting so much more traction, and that sort of populism is rising in Europe, and that's what scares me right now. Like, we have a lot of elections in 2017 with all these populist parties coming into more power, and that's going to be quite some global impact.
And this is it. While foreign policy may not change with the United States, obviously, Brexit in Australia, frankly, the United Kingdom, Australia, unimportant, but, you know, they're not that.
There's definitely a culture that's come out that the world isn't entirely liberal. It's because there's been people like on the internet think a lot about liberal stuff and stuff, but the fact that Trump's got presidency, Brexit happened, and the stuff in America, there's definitely still it's a 50-50 split with the right wing taking a slight edge on it. Is I think the worldwide view, and with everything that's happened, it's slightly built up the world as being slightly more right wing than people initially possibly thought it was. It's not like Trump's done that, but it's that with everything coming together, it sort of made that slight worldview happen.
Do you think that is it actually right wing, or do you think it is just because a lot of it is encouraged by suspicion and fear?
Yeah, and disenfranchisement as well. Yeah.
Do you think it's actually
It's definitely more a demoralized left than an ascendant right, in my opinion.
Yeah, if you look at the statistics, it's very clear from the post-election numbers that it wasn't that more conservatives or Republicans turned out, it was a whole lot less Democrats voted.
Yeah.
And
I think in Europe it's more like the case of the populists, and those are typically sort of more right wing.
Yeah, but you're in a situation where obviously, I think one of the big things is obviously a lot more immigrants are coming into to European countries and America.
Yeah.
And obviously the culture's very different. Noticeably different culture, different skin tone, different religion, different everything. And people are inherently suspicious of... humans are suspicious of other tribes. If you want to go back to the thing, if there's another tribe that are different and they have a different god and they...
Us versus them.
Yeah, and it is obviously... Are people voting for these parties and these ideologies because they are scared and suspicious of other people, as opposed to them supporting necessarily, Republican style right-wing policies? Because obviously most people who vote in elections don't look at policy.
Yeah, they vote with their heart rather than voting with the political sphere. It's definitely... It's polarization, I think, is a part of it. That it's one side versus another side rather than mingling views is what's happened.
I believe I saw another poll which showed that basically fear of the other party is now at record heights in the US.
Yeah. I saw that one as well. That popped up on Twitter earlier.
I mean, it's definitely understandable why, because
yeah,
both parties have been fighting each other. There's been riots coming from the Democrats, but there's been vandalisms and people I think there's some stabbings as well from the Republican side with Trump shirts and everything on. So you can't really deny that they're not Republicans. But it's just so scary that these groups are being so set upon each other. It's like even Trump and I think even Obama said we're all Americans and we're American first and Republican and Democrat second, and people just can't see this right now, and it's horrible.
And the biggest problem is with an us versus them attitude, conflict is going to arise in one form or another. If you look at if you look at the past of us versus them with atheists versus Christians, Christians hating the atheists, atheists hating the Christians, us versus them causes conflict. And if it's going to be right wing versus left wing so vehemently, what does that mean for the sphere of people of what's going to happen? How are people going to intermingle rather than just, I hate you because you're not me?
It isn't even just the physical violence that's a huge issue. I don't know if you guys all saw the same thing I did. Election night and the day after was just the ridiculous surge in things like suicide prevention hotlines that were being sent around to people because there was such an emotional toll. There was so much emotional abuse online. Yeah. It's everything became the cesspool of YouTube comments for a while.
People get invested so much in their belief.
I think this sort of became a thing because people who voted Trump or people who were really against Trump really had strong feelings and were labeled as a certain person, and then sort of became stronger in that position, being no, I'm not that, but I do support Trump.
I'm a deplorable, that kind of...
Yes, that. They sort of became a stronger sort of being a supporter of Trump. It sort of became a part of their identity, and that is sort of more the problem here, I think, that people identify with this stuff so much that it just, it really puts people up against each other, an us versus them.
I would just like to say
that what their vote was. They lost all of their personality. They lost all their humanity. But not on both sides, just everything. Everybody just sort of pulled back from that, and it was only did you vote and who did you vote for?
Yeah. It wasn't why did you vote for them or which policies do you agree with, which did you disagree with. It was you voted Trump, racist. You voted Hillary, corrupt.
Get out of here. Get out of my life. I never want to speak to you again.
Go on, Scott. What were you going to say?
I'm just going to say, during my live streams, whenever politics come up, my answer is always, let's step away from that and celebrate what we have in common, rather than what divides us. Yeah. And it's easy for me as a white male to say that, obviously. But I think, the more of that, the more we can get back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We need to stop viewing people as two separate parties, because at the end of the day, we're 7 billion people as a human race with a lifespan will eventually die. this is too much hatred to have a nice existence.
I intend to live forever or die trying.
That's a nice mentality, really.
Dude, I've watched Kerbal Space Program videos. I know you're going to die trying. It's.
Oh, that's a so. Oh.
Oh.
You doubt my skills.
Sorry, Scott. I love you.
Get Kevin to program your bloody spaceship launch. But one of the other things that's worth discussing as well is the idea that I guess the Republican Party, is it becoming the party of Trump? Because see, a lot of Republicans don't actually like Trump.
Yeah.
Trump is, and historically Trump doesn't really like Republicans either.
Yeah, his thing saying Republicans are the easiest to go for because they're the stupidest voters, I think is the meme, the picture that's being posted around everywhere.
But he's used the Republican Party as a platform for his ideology.
Yeah.
And is the Republican Party becoming a more right-wing Trump party, essentially? And is that acceptable?
I think they will work with whatever gets them enough votes.
Because at the end of the day, if a Republican's in power, that's a Republican in power.
Yeah, you can influence that, can't you?
And it doesn't really that's the thing with the problem with the US system is if you want to split off because you don't agree with your own party, you're going to be a third party and you're not going to get anywhere.
Gary Johnson, Evan McMullin, Jill Stein.
Exactly. In the Netherlands, we have plenty of people who split off, and it usually backfired a lot where they just have a party for maybe a year, maybe try to group up with some other small parties, and eventually crash and burn. But still, they tried and got somewhere.
Well, this is the interesting thing here, in that looking at the sort of election numbers, this election is a huge surge in third-party votes, which obviously a lot of people, we sort of discussed before, the idea is it wasted vote or isn't. But regardless of the fact, regardless of whether you think it's wasted vote or not, third parties are gaining traction suddenly.
True.
True.
Look at the prevalence of UKIP in the UK. What happened with them? That was a surprise for a lot of people.
Yeah,
how much UKIP got.
But looking at for example, apparently in 2012 there were 2 million votes for other parties. This year there were 6, so it's sort of, and
That's a triple.
It's been that sort of 2 million for the past 3 votes. It's been pretty stagnant, and suddenly it's been a big jump. But we're looking as well, interestingly, 2008 it was 69 million for Obama and 59 million for McCain. 2012 it was 62 million for Obama and 58 million for Romney, and this year it was 60 million for Clinton and 59 million for Trump. So it's not that huge a loss of turnout.
But it was a loss of turnout on one side.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem. People are sometimes people are blaming the third party voters for because you voted third party, Clinton lost, but also
in fairness,
the 44% who didn't vote.
In fairness, if all the third party voters did vote for Clinton, she would have won.
But it's not confirmed they'd have voted for Clinton. They could have gone.
No, well, of course, yeah. But statistically, if you put all those votes on the Clinton side, she would have won.
Mind you, if you took all the 11,000 people that voted for Harambe and put them on Clinton, she'd have won.
Nah, I don't think so. But yeah.
And by the same measure, if you took Clinton's votes and put them behind anybody else, they would have won.
Yeah. But that's the point. The Harambe thing, God.
I want to die.
That was just
humongous,
stupid.
right?
Yeah,
some people wrote in other candidates like Mitt Romney and Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Hooray!
Yeah.
Do you guys promise not to get angry at me if I tell you who I wrote in?
Go on.
Okay, keeping in mind I live in Illinois, so it didn't matter. Hillary got my electoral votes all the same. I basically declared allegiance to one of the most wanted men in the United States. I voted for Edward Snowden for president, and myself for vice president.
That. Yeah.
I was quite a fan of the what was it, the humongous bone.
the amount of votes for humongous, Ken Bone, and D's nuts.
Oh yeah, but it's amazing.
Giant meteor of doom.
I mean, if you're gonna throw away your vote, you might do it in the right way, right?
If everybody was automatically registered to vote, That would help out quite a bit. Because
Also,
I know
mandatory voting.
I know there was a lot of people who had no way to get to the physical locations in order to register to vote.
Well,
They were blocked off from that, so they weren't able to actually vote.
Well,
Because
this
a
is the
lot of places
interesting
you
That's
can't
probably not
register
half
online.
the population, right?
In-
I mean,
No, not half the population. It's a small amount, but it's still some people who get that backlash for not voting, and they don't deserve it.
yeah, that's true.
I mean, you look at you sort of in the UK. It's excuses for voting are a lot less, frankly, because
Yeah.
our polling station will generally be within a 15-minute walk.
Because we're a smaller country with smaller constituencies than.
So you know, if you don't vote in the US, I think there is a lot more of a justified stigma against that. Because like, look, polling it's open till 11 p.m. It's like 15 minutes. Just go and go vote. Fuck's sake, go vote.
Every primary school, every junior school in the UK, it's everywhere.
Churches,
So.
you know, it's
Town halls, everything.
But isn't it like in the UK that you're stuck to one polling station? So if you're accidentally somewhere else
are.
that you can't vote.
You can.
Yeah.
There is postal
My
vote. though.
polling station is the local infant school nearby to me. If I went to the town hall, it would all. Yeah.
It's the same here.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's different from me because I can vote anywhere. Like within my town, I can vote anywhere, and if I want to vote outside my town, I have to request a special sort of pass. But I can still vote anywhere I want.
Well, this is the thing.
Yeah.
In the
obviously, if, for example, if you're here, basically, you go on the electoral register, and you have your address down, and you'll go to the polling station, and you'll say, my name is blah blah, what's your postcode? It's that, and they'll have everyone from that local area on a little list, and they'll take you off. And it's easy. And obviously you can do postal vote as well. That's quite easy to do over here.
You can do
same.
postal vote
Yeah.
here, but a lot of places still require you to register in person.
Yeah, and a lot of
And
it-
some require you to actually drop off your early ballot at a
Right.
polling station.
well, this is it. Obviously, the US being much bigger and much more car heavy, and a lot more big rural areas. You know, it is a lot for people to vote. And obviously,
Can I ask why registration is actually necessary for voting? I mean, why is that system in place?
That's why I said it should be an opt-out system, but it's not. So you
Why
have to
is
opt
it
in.
this system in the first place? Like, how did
because
this come
that's
to
how
be?
it's been.
Are you gonna?
That's how it's
Okay.
always
Yeah,
been.
you're gonna get if you try doing. You're gonna get a lot of candidates going. Oh, it's going to increase voter fraud, which is statistically never really a thing that matters.
No, not really. I mean, otherwise I would notice.
Oh, yeah. But hey.
Also, just taking out from the thing, Scott said he needs to get back to work soon, so let's all say a lovely goodbye to Scott.
Goodbye, Scott.
Bye, Scott.
I do.
Bye, guys. Fly safe.
Oh,
Thanks for joining us, Scott. Appreciate it.
Scott, can you make us a rocket?
What?
To make us a rocket to take us all away.
Please. For the love of
For
God.
free, for free. I mean, I'm Dutch. I'm cheap.
Gee.
Oh,
Great
no
incentive.
promises.
Ah, crap. I guess
Aw.
I can't join then.
Scott, you're letting us down, man. Letting us down. Anyway, going back to...
Oh no, he's gone.
He's gone. Scott's gone.
Rest in peace.
Well, that's the highest build.
Well.
Can't half the viewers are going to leave now.
Dude, 10 viewers! Yeah! Right.
Oh god, everyone's leaving. Oh no.
Well, that's the point. The idea of it doesn't really make sense. I suppose the voting system is very hard to change, as we discussed before. When
AV referendum 2011 didn't work.
but this is it. It's very hard to get the voting system changed when the people in power.
Yeah, because with first past the post, you keep Labour and keep Conservative in the UK, so
even
why
that,
would they
it-
want AV?
The people in power want to stay in power.
Yeah,
So
and
they're going to keep it so they stay in power.
But even if mandatory voting wouldn't take them out of power, they don't need it to stay in power, so it's not relevant.
Yeah.
Which is kind of unfortunate, the way politics works. It's a very, it's one of the flaws with democracy.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, I've been doing electoral systems at the moment, and literally every system is better than first past the post. It's...
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you'd rather have a dictatorship, right?
Okay, what would that... Okay, I mean, have you seen North Korea? What they're doing over there is tip-top. No.
Hardly everyone agrees with each other, right?
Because Because if they don't, they die. No,
I think we can all agree North Korea is terrible. I don't think we have to tiptoe around.
Let's have a discussion about that.
Oh,
right?
Well, I don't know.
I definitely think tiered voting is really a good idea to try and get through all of this splitting the vote nonsense. I think it would help get more people's opinions actually out there. It's like a process of elimination, not just, these two. And it wouldn't be as difficult an overhaul than a lot of other things, so small changes at a time.
Someone in the chat just said, voting should be a choice, not forced.
Voting should be a choice M9, not forced.
Mandatory voting, there's a lot of negatives and positives around, but at least automatic registration doesn't force you to vote.
Yeah. Mandatory voting is a whole nother.
Yeah.
Depending on the state, though, it puts you on for jury duty, which some people are very against.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah.
You can get out of jury duty very easily.
Really?
Yeah, but you also run the risk of being held in contempt.
Nah, just say that you favor jury nullification. They'll dismiss you so quick.
Well, basically with jury duty, if you say that you have any reason to have a bias before going in, then you are taken out.
Yeah.
It's like there's the cat killers going, I really hate cats, okay.
What?
Kick you out.
If you don't respond to a summons, then that's when you are in contempt, and that's when you can face criminal charges.
Yeah.
More likely, you're just banned from being in a certain area and doing certain things there, like voting and stuff. But
Totally good.
We've got slightly off track here. Now we're talking about jury duty.
A little bit, yeah.
The US presidential
jury duty is
election.
so relevant.
Will Donald Trump remove jury duty?
I hope so.
But
well, he gets to choose 3 Supreme Court justices, so that'll be interesting.
I mean, it will be interesting. It's possible that it would not be. I mean, it'd be interesting to see if the nominees are more or less conservative than what one might have assumed someone like Ted Cruz would have nominated.
Yeah.
Well, and Supreme Court justices have a funny way of not working out the way the people who nominated them had hoped.
Someone did just mention in the chat about the idea that it's very hard to sort of do mandatory voting without sort of a national identity card system or something similar.
Well, mandatory voting in Australia is the big example of it, because they get great turnout, 94% turnout, and the rest of that is either spoiled ballots, which still count, or people who get fined for not turning up. But there is a lot of logistical issues in forcing your country to vote.
Yeah.
Especially when we don't even have a national holiday for Election Day.
Oh, that should just be given. That should just be a regular thing.
I mean,
Employers are supposed to allow you to go vote, but it's not practiced, and it's not really chased up if you try and report them.
American workers' rights are pretty shocking, frankly.
Oh, we have rights.
I realized today I was talking to a friend, right, and he was saying about how he's a bit annoyed at work, and he's sort of there's just a number. There's a number you can call it. It's a charity, but it's funded by the government, which just gives free legal advice on workers' rights, and they'll fully help you no matter what. And there's that for everything. There's that for housing rights, and there's that for tenancy issues, and there's that for everything. Basically,
how many people know about it?
It's not that publicized, but it's there.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of thing of if you go into a place and go, I need help, or you go into a job center and go, I need help, they'll go, okay, call this number, they'll give you legal advice. And in the United States, I've noticed people just don't get that kind of stuff. When I was complaining before about, I was making a few jokes because a new oven, and someone was like, well, when I am in the US, when we complain our oven was broken, they threaten to evict us. Because it's very hard in the United States without money. And without be able to just hire a lawyer yourself, to be able to do stuff like that. But obviously, again, country as a whole is very against sort of big government and government intervention and stuff. But it's a whole other topic, really. But it's a complicated country with complicated ideals, It's very hard to try and pin those down necessarily.
Even harder to cause any change in them.
It is.
It's a massive country built out of the UK, so it's never going to go well. It's very America.
Well, this
biggest
explains
problem.
it, isn't it? We got frickin' Australia. We got
The
fucking
British are just fucking shit.
Yeah,
This
they
is
are.
the problem. Bitch. We just fucking suck.
Everyone here sucks,
Equally
really,
though,
yeah.
Ireland and Canada are doing pretty all right for themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Canada wasn't entirely you.
No.
You see, the thing is, Ireland really, it kind of is doing what America did like 200, 300 years ago. They're doing it sort of like now.
I think there's a really good reason for that too, Matt. Like, America was always supposed to be this laboratory for democracy where you can experiment, and we don't have the luxury of doing that anymore, because as others have pointed out, the rest of the world depends on the Pax Americana to keep the world stable. We have to be the responsible ones, which means we can't be the spontaneous experimental ones anymore.
I mean, we also depended on the UK, but they decided to let us down quite a bit there.
Yeah, UK. Look what you did.
Sorry.
What can we say?
Like, I know how all the people in the UK who are like, oh my gosh, why did you vote him in? I wish I could have voted. I know how they feel, because I felt that with the Brexit vote. I was like, please, why didn't you just stay? You fucked my salary. Why did you do this to me?
Yeah.
I'm now curious to.
I sort of have
are we
those
going to
feelings
form
now,
a Mid-Atlantic
both
Union?
sides.
Yeah, Mid-Atlantic. I wouldn't be
God,
surprised,
no.
you know. I mean, the UK have always wanted to just sort of like move themselves a bit over towards America.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
actually make a big project where we move the entire physical island to the middle of the ocean.
And we'll
That'll
make Mexico
trade
pay
easier.
for it.
Like,
Oh,
yeah,
let's go.
we moved Britain, the island of Britain, to the fucking middle of the Atlantic. Like, we put Ireland where Britain was, so it's a bit close to
Yeah.
Europe, and they can get a
Yeah.
bit more involved, and everyone will be fine.
Yeah,
But
the
what
trade
about
will be
Scotland?
easier,
Would they
and
want
yeah.
to do that?
Oh, you gotta cut
Scotland's
Scotland
going
off,
to be
yeah.
attached to
And
Ireland.
so, like, sayonara.
You're gonna cut Scotland off, sort of awkwardly stitch it to Ireland.
Yeah. Hey, I'm a knitter. I can stitch a bit, right?
Yeah. No, actually, here's the thing. You cut Northern Ireland off, right? And you cut Scotland off, and you swap them, right?
Yeah. See?
You stitch
That's
Northern
all
Ireland
right.
onto Britain, and you stitch Scotland onto...
It's like attaching a sleeve, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's easy enough.
Perfect.
It's
No
like the
problem with
world's
that.
worst arm transplant. What the hell?
Jesus Christ. But no, there is definitely an argument, right, for obviously this and Brexit and all that. And it's very hard. Obviously, you know, you get a lot of people, and I've seen it definitely on Twitter going, you know, you're not American, why do you care? Or I've seen people who care about Brexit going, you're not British, why do you care?
This is an impact on the rest
The
of
fact
the world.
is,
right? So,
that annoyed me so much. People saying, well, you're British. Why do you care about American politics?
The thing is,
Oh,
right,
jeez. Same
first
thing
of all,
for me.
I'm interested in American politics because it's interesting.
yeah.
First of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, it affects the world policy-wise. It's not...
They are the biggest superpower. They're the only surviving superpower from the Cold War.
But
You guys are
that's-
going to affect the UK
You see,
slightly.
that's not my necessarily interest. My interest is on a cultural level, as we've discussed, and the idea of that sort of encouraging that sort of far-right kind of isolationist culture. And, you know, Brexit is another example of that. And, you know, when people say, oh, you're British, you know, why do you care about this? You can have that argument for Brexit because I'm Irish. For me, personally, the UK can fuck off out of the EU. I'm still an EU citizen. I can still do whatever the fuck I want in the EU. It doesn't
Matt, why
really...
do you care about the
Yay.
EU referendum? How dare you?
Well, this is it. It doesn't really make a personal difference to me. But my interest in both this and sort of the US
Yeah.
politics and all that is because it sets back my personal world ideology.
Mm.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
And my personal world ideology, and I'm saying, I think it's best, but I'm not going to say it's objectively best because you know I'm trying to keep it
Yeah.
a bit sort of discussion-y. Is we as humans linking up, and I'm a very Star Trek ideologist. I suppose, you know, humans setting all the wars aside and it's becoming, you know, one Earth, you know, just joined together in sort of peace and, you know, go off and explore and do good things as a species, and stop drawing lines in the sand. Going, this is my line and this is your line. You're not going to have any of our pies. These are our pies, and you can't have any of our Marmite. This is our Marmite.
Who wants Marmite?
Oh,
No one.
Yeah. Also with me, I'm a political student who's taking a politics A level. Of course, I'm going to be interested in how politics works in other countries aside from my own. And also, as Matt said, I am interested about how my view of my country compares to my view of America, and how everything links together and how everything works. So, considering I stayed up for the whole election, Americans go, why would you do that? Well, it's interesting. It affects me. It's something happening in our modern world. I mean, why do we look at the history of America since it's not our country?
Well, actually, to add to this, my mother is a teacher on a primary school, and she came home yesterday and said, yes, children are actually worried about Trump. They were saying, I am scared about Trump. These are Dutch children. They're not American. They're not British. They just, hear their parents being worried about this, but they're still worried about Trump. This is insane.
Yeah.
It still affects even the Dutch people, just because, it sort of fucks over everything.
It has a bigger cultural impact
Yeah.
than a lot of people realize. Obviously, America are this bastion of country. Everyone looks up to them, even if they might not necessarily.
Everyone's economies, it's their economy compared to the American economy.
Everything they compare themselves to America, even if in a lot of ways they might be better than America. Everyone just compares themselves to America. And obviously their culture and their worldview and their society affects us more than their policy ever could. If the American society comes to accept a xenophobic attitude, or an Islamophobic attitude, or a transphobic attitude, or whatever, it's a situation where, since everyone's looking to, since America are the star, they're not even the star pupil, they're the jock, right? They're the jock
big
of the class.
people.
Yeah.
The people with the big personality.
Yeah, like Trump.
But that's the thing. Everyone sees them and is influenced by them in some way. You might have the nerds, but the nerds are still, even if the nerds are going, oh, we're going to ignore the jock over there. They're looking at the jock. Well, everyone's looking at him and thinks he's cool. So again, cultural. I have to stress the importance of that. That most of these issues we're talking about, and most of the reason people care, is for cultural reasons.
Yeah.
Well, it's important. It's important to recognize, though, and important to just be very clear about the fact that, half of U.S. citizens voted. Half of that, approximately, voted for Trump, and even assuming that you completely buy into that he is a completely xenophobic, homophobic, whatever the case may be. It would be shocking to know that even a majority of that amount voted for those reasons, as opposed to just saying he's the least disliked candidate on my ballot right now. And so I feel like there's a tendency, and I know I personally have kind of felt this tendency to go oh my God, half of the country hates black people, just as sort of an immediate, or hates women, or whatever the case may be. There's sort of an immediate gut instinct to feel like, oh no, what just happened? What does this mean? But because of the way that, we're dealing with a first-past-the-post system, we're dealing with candidates who weren't necessarily liked for a variety of reasons. And so looking at what has resulted here, we need to be aware that this doesn't reflect a decision on the part of the American people as to what our culture and attitudes toward people should be like. It may reflect that for some individuals, but it's certainly not.
The problem is, to other countries, it does.
Yeah, well, you're smarter than us. You guys are better educated. Look closer,
Yeah, exactly. We're smart.
Well, this is the thing, though, isn't it? Because obviously, if you don't live in America, you are looking at the public figure. You are looking at the president. You are looking at what they represent.
Right.
And it's very easy for, you sort of get that attitude in a lot of European countries. Oh, fucking big, fat, loud Americans. You get that is the view of Americans. That is the...
Yeah.
Brash, whoa, we like war.
So lately you've all assumed that we're black and skinny and cool.
No, but even with
awesome.
But even with that sort of view of loud, annoying Americans, there's still the notion of the American dream in a lot of like the European people's minds, like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so the ideal, but this has sort of been smashed to the ground now. I mean, yeah, like just the idea that people are sort of scared for war or sort of this happening and Brexit happening. It's the only thing, by the way, that is positive for me about Brexit is cheap trips. Aside from that, nothing.
Yeah, whereas the pound dropped, so I'm now getting paid $3 or $4 less per hour than when I was hired.
Oh, the fucking
Yeah, because the
sucks.
pound dropped, but now the dollar's dropped as well. So the UK going to the America is fine. Going to any other country, fuck.
Well, the thing is, right, there was a brief positive for sort of where I work as a YouTuber because we get paid in dollars.
Yeah, the opposite
Wow.
sucks,
Oh yeah,
doesn't it?
screw you.
Well, this is what I'm saying, and this is why, like, I think when people, you know, for me personally on Twitter, when sort of people get annoyed at me for certain view, like I heard a lot of people, you know, when I was, I have been complaining about Trump, and
Yeah.
and they, you know, you get a lot of people, even with Brexit, going, "Oh, boo-hoo, your candidate didn't win. Get over it. Stop complaining." It's like, okay, A, you'd also be complaining, so shut your mouth. B,
Yeah.
that is a tenet of democracy to represent, to have every voice heard. And I don't, it doesn't affect me. Like, it doesn't matter if my candidate doesn't, my personal candidate doesn't win, because it doesn't make a difference to me personally. It doesn't affect what I'm doing, it doesn't affect how I live my life. But it does affect how I think the world will go, and that matters to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're part of the world.
Yeah, and because my ideology is someone who gives a shit about actually the rest of the world and other people, and a lot of people don't have that, and that's fine. I think, you know, it's very easy to have that ideology when you work on the internet, especially.
Yeah, because we interact with, like, it's people here in Irishman, English woman, a Dutch woman, and we had a Scotsman, and Americans all interacting very quickly, very easily.
Well, it doesn't matter, because on the
Yeah.
internet you just, doesn't matter.
We're all just blops of ones and zeros on the internet. It's all just...
But even then, like, that maybe that's just me, but I've always sort of been of the mentality of, I always try to see the best in people, and by sort of these big things happening, that sort of becomes very hard if the majority is sort of like making bad choices, you know?
Oh, you dirty optimist. Ugh.
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm pretty much a nihilist, but about like humans, I tend to be sort of more, you know, there's sort of good in people, right?
I try to see the good in people, but I work as a moderator, so it's kind of hard.
Oh yeah, I understand. Oof.
It is unfortunate, but it is obviously seeing that, having that optimism is important. It's very easy for us, but obviously at the same time, it's important to be empathetic and understand the position of people who are living in a small town who, you know, they don't use the internet, you know, the fucking plant in their town shut down, now everything's closing down, nobody has a job, and they can't, you know, afford to pay their car payment, and from their perspective, it's all the fault of the government, and it's you know, putting these regulations on there. And from their perspective, again, fucking fully justified. And this is the problem with this election. A lot of things. It's very hard to. A lot of people say that we're in our own bubbles, we're in our own echo chambers, and we are. Everyone is. But the problem is, I feel. You can still understand someone else's perspective without changing your own perspective.
Yeah.
Like, I can understand why people voted for Donald Trump fully, to the point where if I was in their position, I would vote for Donald Trump, because that's where empathy is.
Yeah.
But I still disagree with the overall conclusion.
Yeah.
You know, even to the point where in Nazi soldiers... Right, or
you can see why the Nazis did what they did when you have the propaganda that was behind them and what they were doing for their country.
That's it.
The way media works, yeah. Like that's just the cause of
Hitler
that. So many Nazis were okay
propaganda,
with things
everything.
happening.
It is that, and you have to understand that you can't just look at people two-dimensionally and look over there. You've got to get inside their head and understand why.
If you look at people two-dimensionally, you end up with the us versus them attitude we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
like,
you see, people aren't racist, right?
Yeah.
People aren't just racist. Racist is not a personality trait. Racist is a symptom of other personality traits.
It's your view on your certain outlook of reality.
And you have to figure out those other traits to actually understand that reality and that sort of worldview. And that's why it's very hard. That's why it's, people, it's very easy to go up to say, oh, Trump's a racist xenophobe. And obviously, I've said stuff like that on Twitter, but the fact is it's Twitter, you're limited to 140 characters.
I can't write down, Trump can be viewed as racist. I have to go, Trump racist. Okay, cool. Right, put that down.
Yeah, you can't do a full dissertation. That's what this is for.
Well, that's the thing. I get a little... it's called too long. Twitter, innit?
Right.
That's it. Twitter's very much
and roll credits. Right, okay.
Okay, bye everyone. Have a nice chat. Okay.
Twitter's very much a platform for little thoughts. And a lot of people seem to get annoyed. And Twitter is definitely a place where people get very annoyed by the fact they are little thoughts. Going, oh, but you should have had this big thought. It's like, it's Twitter, mate.
Sorry, man, I had to concise my view into a little view rather than my whole actual view of everything.
And still somehow fit all of the curse words in there.
You've got to paraphrase.
The amount of fucks that come out of my Twitter, if I remove those, I might be able to put my opinion in. But sorry, I can't.
Well, that's it. No,
it's part natural. Of your opinion, yeah.
Sometimes I'm writing a tweet, and I've got very good at rewording stuff to fit in.
Yeah.
Right, I'm rewording it and getting rid of a bit of punctuation here and there and all that, and I'm sat there going, there's like 3 fucks there. But they are really crucial to the tone of the tweets. I've got to leave them in. And then
they're just needed.
Because if you don't put those fucks in that tweet, Matt, people are going to go, Matt, are you okay? You're not swearing.
There's been some tweets that have actually just not even done. Because I'm sat there going, I can't fit swear words in.
Actually, to go
Where
back
is
to
the word bastard in this?
to go back to your point about bubbles, though, the thing that I guess makes me nervous is looking at Twitter kind of having problems and becoming less popular with certain demographics, and it's the last kind of open social network now. We've moved into the idea of interacting with friends and friends of friends, whether people are on Facebook or Snapchat or whatever platforms. We've moved social media interaction to a private medium, and I feel like this is probably going to make us all think that, yes, the person we want to vote for president is the person everyone we know wants to vote for president. Yeah. We're not going to run into the diversity of views, as much as people hate Twitter for the fact that, you're encountering people who have diverse and short and not particularly well-expressed views. You are encountering people with views you disagree with. That's something that you don't get in a lot of other places anymore.
Yeah.
I think one of the problems with it as well is I do try to listen. It's not like, if someone's respectful to me, I'll be like, again, I had this very long conversation with this very, very big Trump supporter, the one that wears the hats and goes to the rallies, And that's a person I ideologically disagree with completely. They are the stark opposite to me life-wise. They are a 50-year-old woman living in a small American town. Completely different.
Wait, Matt, are you not a 50-yeart-old?
Shit, you got me.
Guys, if you type in
50-year-old
what
the hell are
you
doing here? You don't represent the 50-year-old women.
Wait, I thought he was a 13-year-old goth girl.
Oh.
I knew that would come for this live stream. We got to it.
Look, Kevin, you've met me. You know I am really a 13-year-old little girl. So.
Yep.
I mean, from your height as well, Kevin, I probably do look like a 13. Kevin's tall. That's a joke.
Dumb.
No, but it is important to listen to that. But I get some people on Twitter who are very disrespectful, and when someone's like, if someone basically is a dickhead to me, I'll just basically tell them to fuck off, because at that point, there are people who aren't willing to listen. There are people who are just going, fuck you, this is my opinion, fuck you.
Us versus them attitudes, that's their whole shtick.
It's kind of like that, and people always say, well, you do it. It's like, yeah, but I'm doing it, I'm not adding it to anyone, I'm just saying it. I'm not sending them unsolicited. You followed me, it's solicited, you can just unfollow me. I'm not replying to people with my unsolicited angry opinions. There's a difference. And I like people replying to me with their different opinions, but you have to be... You're not tweeting to your audience, you're tweeting to a different person. You have to understand that.
You're tweeting from your view of the world to the big sphere that is Twitter, just putting it out there. Like, I don't act round at I've got a friend who's big Trump supporter in America, completely different to me in every way, and I'm a friend with him. I don't at my feelings about Trump straight to him. I don't go immediately to him and at him, because there's no point doing that, because that's just creating conflict where you don't need to create conflict.
So there's this guy last night. There's a good example of this. Let's see. I tweet way too much, is what I always.
Yeah, you do.
I mean, you've been tweeting during this, so you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's too long for Twitter, but Matt
Too
still
boring
uses
for you?
Twitter.
I try and not talk much during these. I try and let other people talk.
Yeah, but you're the dungeon master. You're supposed to talk.
I'm the moderator. I'm trying to moderate it a bit. Let's see. Robin Williams. I did tweet a lot yesterday, just saying random shit, trying to like not
You
talk
should
about
have
the
seen me
election.
tweeting during the actual election.
I was
I'm
talking about
sorry to anyone who
pretzels
follows me.
God, yeah, the election.
I just got hammered and played Overwatch during the election because I couldn't deal with it. So.
What's the fact? Well, this is the thing. I had the option to either drink or take painkillers, and I opted for painkillers in the end.
Why not both?
Because then I die, Kevin.
What's the problem?
Actually,
Come
you
on.
can only
Take-
die with certain mixtures of them, and
Yeah.
only in excess of one or the
Oh
other.
yeah, I can't really take a bunch of codeine and then a bunch of whiskey. It's not really.
You can.
That sounds like a
it's
lot of
just
fun.
a very
You
strange
know, if
night.
that happened, that people would blame Trump for the death of Matt. That would be the thing that would come out of
Or
that.
credit
It's
Matt.
Trump's
Or
a
credit Trump.
murderer.
Thanks,
of
Trump.
Little girls.
Clearly,
Yeah.
Trump hates women. Then obviously.
Here we go.
I mean, this could pretty much fit with the profile he already has, right?
Jesus. But no,
Oh God.
I found the tweet. I said that my comment was, with this and Brexit, the world has been, again, personal ideology here, the world's been set back, been made more isolationist, more bigoted, and more accepting of hate. Because culturally, I think it has.
Yeah,
whether
and
you
Dan, I think, tweeted something similar to that as
Well-
well. Someone around that tweeted something similar to that as well.
And whether you
But-
agree with that is fine. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. Someone tweeted me, fucking hell, Matt, stop fucking crying. The best of the worst one, you liberal crybaby. Holy shit.
Liberal crybaby.
Literal liberal
Wow.
crybaby. And frankly, I'm perfectly willing to talk, but when someone's really hostile like that,
Yeah.
the conversation's already over.
If somebody wants to ask a question about your view, that's fine. That's a good discussion. We can do that. But when someone directly attacks your belief there, that's the
Well,
problem.
that's not even. It's not even attacking belief. It's attacking you as a person.
Yeah.
And
It's dismissing
you
you
can
for
be
your
as,
beliefs.
as disrespectful toward an opinion. I mean, that's what we do. Is we throttle opinions against the wall and try and make them die to see what works and what doesn't. But when you try and imply that someone doesn't have the right to opinion or is somehow less of a person, has not value, it does not have the right to express their opinion, then there's no reason to have a discussion with them.
Well, this is the problem. Obviously, this with this woman I had this conversation with, because I asked her, I said, because she said, "Oh, we're going to make America great again." I went, "What does that mean? Please tell me." And she went, "Do you really want to know?" And I was like, "Yes, I'm not even please." So she actually explained it to me, and I went, "I understand. I disagree." And we had a very respectful conversation, and she liked some of my other rant. She liked my Twitter avatar, and she was like, "Your avatar's nice." I was like, "Thank you." It's good. That's the brilliance of Twitter and what Twitter can really be.
That's what we want the whole world. In an ideological dream state view, that will be the great world. Everyone with different beliefs, but, oh, you've got a beef there. Tell me why you believe that. Oh, you believe that. I believe this. Not, oh, you believe that. Die. Oh.
Yeah, but
Basically, what I got.
When my family would explain when I was younger why they were Republican, why they were voting for a certain thing, it made sense. It made sense for their situation.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't understand why my sister wanted to vote for John Kerry. I thought, well, it's been Bush. Why shouldn't it just continue? He's apparently doing good according to my parents. And then I moved out. I got my own views, and I realized that I could respect the ones that they had because it worked for them. But for my particular situation, it didn't fit. I'm not just gonna straight out say, oh, I hate all of those people. I hate everybody from where I grew up because they had these conservative views. No, it's different people, different situations. So different politicians are gonna work well for them.
Yeah. I used to be really bad at letting other people have their views. I used to be one of those cunts who was like, oh, you have another view? Go fuck yourself. But I've learned that that gets you nowhere. That gets you hated.
It's hard not to do that.
Yeah, if you have your, like, for me being transgender, if I see somebody say, oh, transgender people aren't people, I'm gonna be a bit annoyed. I'm gonna be like, oh, but you have to try and work past that and go, okay, why do you believe that? What's your belief on that and that situation there? And doing that makes you makes your situation better, because if you go at someone and just attack them for their belief, they're not gonna listen to your belief. They're not gonna try and see how their view goes. Like, they're not, like, with me, they're not going to suddenly like transgenders if I go to them and go, oh, you don't like transgenders? Fuck you. You have to try and work to a way to better both people in the situation.
Like let's say this person on Twitter, there are some people who, they are not willing. They don't want a conversation. They are not, like, they don't want to learn from you, and
they're stuck in their view, they want their view, they keep that view, they don't want it.
I'm stuck in my view, and that's fine, but there's a difference in that I still want to learn about other views.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to, even though I'm stuck in my view, there's a difference. Like, you can still be stuck in your view and be willing to listen. You know, I retweeted it because recently I've been trying to call out people for being dickheads a bit more, because I feel I should be doing that, really, rather than just letting people be dickheads.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, you're awful. Bit over the top.
Understand that.
A bit over the top, but, you know.
It's like a bit of a jolt of reality to them if they're called out on it, because they think they're not going to, and they think that they have that anonymity, they can say whatever they want.
But this is it, and then they replied, awful for having a different opinion, right? Oh, don't speak politics if all you know is liberal buzzwords and no actual arguments. And that is it. That's it. You know,
that's the end of the... when they come back with something like that, there's no point.
Well, that's
pushing.
it. You know, it just, and there's a lot of people like it, like who are like this on Twitter. Someone like people who. They dismiss everything you say as a buzzword. You know, I use the word xenophobic isn't a buzzword. It has a meaning. You know, isolationist isn't a buzzword. It has a meaning.
Yeah.
It's Twitter. I have to condense my thoughts a bit. But it's that, and it's very frustrating. It's hard not to respond to people like this. I've struggled quite a lot trying to actually... It's very hard to talk to people who are outside your worldview, even if they're being respectful. It's very easy to just ignore people. And I do that a lot. I'm quite guilty of that.
Yeah.
But when someone provokes you, it's hard not to get agitated and respond. And then that is why there is so much divisiveness. That's why there is so much hate, because it's very easy to prod people on the other side when you have such a...
A lot of the time, emotion comes before being reasonable. Your personal views will fire forward, and then you'll go, it will... Yeah.
Yeah, it's because it's so personal. People tend to get very defensive, like straight up. Like when you get in a discussion, like normally the first reaction for people when they get sort of attacked on their views is like,
no, but fuck off.
Yeah, I'm defensive, and you have to listen to me, and stuff like that. But when people actually take the time to just sort of think about what they're saying or what the other person's saying, and take time to actually figure out their worldview and their horizon, and that sort of makes it easier to
it goes back to what Scott said back when Scott was here. Rest in peace, Scott. Back what Scott said about how we have to take a step back, look past the belief system, look past what people believe in, and look that we're all just human, and we have to look back behind the ideologies and try and view the person behind the ideology rather than what they are throwing forward. It's trying to keep that view whilst also letting people keep their own views, and as America says, as one of their parts of the Constitution, free speech.
It's very hard to encourage other people to do that.
Yeah.
I'd say, going back to this person again, he asked me to explain why Trump is so awful without resorting to ad homs saying look it up or using buzzwords. So I did.
I saw that tweet. I will admit you did. Yeah.
I did. I went in 3 tweets. I went about his environmental policies. Went about his running mate supporting electroshock treatment for fucking homosexuals. All this stuff, and they ended up saying, "I think you're wrong." I was like, "Well, okay."
And I've had the exact same experience with Clinton supporters when I was talking about climate issues or anything like that. I put all this effort into trying to explain why I'm breaking with the party, even though I really, really don't want to. And they just hand wave it away like that, like it was nothing. So frustrating.
But do you think, right, because I was quite guilty of something with Clinton. I was very guilty of not ignoring a lot of Clinton's flaws, but not publicizing them.
Yeah. I was like that as well. I said a lot about Trump stuff, and I didn't say too much about Clinton.
Yeah.
On my Twitter.
And you see, because
and that's not a good thing.
It's not.
The emperor is naked. You gotta say, hey, you're not wearing any clothes.
I can see your bollocks. You have to say it.
See, I agree it's not a good thing. And it's very hard because, you see, obviously I say support, but I wanted Clinton to win. From my opinion, I thought she was the best candidate practically out of the current ones, and it doesn't, it's irrelevant at this point whether that's right or wrong. But that was my opinion, and that was the one I was trying to push. And it's very easy to it was actually one of the things I really hated about the Clinton campaign was that rather than show this is what we're doing, most of their campaigning was look how bad Trump is.
Yeah, it was Trump's called, like Clinton in one of the debates when Trump has called people slobs, and she talked about a bunch of stuff that Trump has said, but
yeah, but it's also the other way around, because Trump has been mainly like, oh, look at how bad Clinton is, and that's sort of been like the main reason, well, not the main reason, the big reason why people voted either Trump or Clinton, because they didn't like Trump or Clinton.
Trump was look how bad our country is, look how bad Obama is, look how bad all these politicians are, look how bad this is, that is this. While Clinton did just focus on the one person. I get much like we were saying before about how Trump said so many things that you lost track, while Clinton usually kept to one issue.
The debates that they had together, once it was down to just the two candidates, all it turned into was just shit-flinging. There was no real talk of what's happening. It was just back and forth, who's the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was briefly talk about foreign policy and economy, but eventually just like emails and sexual harassment.
Well, even the debate, even the Masters of Ceremony were like that. The first thing they asked Trump was your comments on grabbing women by the pussy. They didn't try and keep it towards actual policy either. It was a popularity contest.
I mean, in fairness, I think it is important to ask that question.
Yeah, it's definitely something in the public sphere that people want to know about.
Not to dwell on that question.
Yeah, I mean, in the prime ministerial election, we didn't ask Cameron pig fucking. It wasn't a thing that was asked up in every single debate, because the debates were much more policy focused on what the party's going to do. That was what.
They're more boring.
Yeah.
Part of it is just that Trump is a master forum troll, for lack of a better word, and he quite expertly got everybody else down on his level in no time. And, Democrats can't function the way Republicans do. We can't play by the same set of rules. It just doesn't work.
It is difficult, I think. It means the playing field isn't really level in a lot of ways.
Yeah. No, it's not, and it's never been, but that's what it means to be on our side, is fighting up an uphill battle.
And it's unfortunate. And I say it is very easy to ignore things about the candidate you're trying to push. And
if you like one side, you're going to try and give your side the benefit of the doubt, whereas if you dislike the other side and they do something wrong, you're more likely to look at it and go, wrong thing.
The problem is a lot of it is like it's quite. I found a lot of things quite problematic when with Clinton, because obviously a lot of the things that people were reporting are pretty unsubstantiated. It's much like the sort of Trump rape accusations. It's why I don't really talk about them very much, because again they are accusations, and while sexual harassment accusations generally aren't lying, again, innocent until proven guilty. I said that about Clinton's emails, and I said that about Donald Trump's bloody sexual harassment lawsuits.
Yeah.
That's just how it should be.
Proven
guilty.
I'm going to treat them both as innocent until guilty. I can't. But again, you get some people You know, they tweet, oh, Clinton wants to go to war with Russia.
Yeah.
And it's like you're going, okay, I understand how you got to that conclusion, but that's not an objective fact. You can't use that. You have to, again, much like you calling someone racist, you have to
back it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are reasons why people think that, but again, that is something that it's jumps ahead.
Someone in the chat just said confirmation bias.
It is that. Well, yeah. It's like fucking people Trump.
I agree. Yes, it is confirmation bias.
Definitely.
We all
100%.
agree.
And people all like with Trump.
No, it's not.
Trump. A lot of people do. Like Trump, like saying about nuke codes. Oh, he's going to nuke everyone. He can't trust him with the nuclear codes. No, he's not an idiot.
Yeah.
He's an asshole, but he's not an idiot. Like, you know, Trump is a massive. Even people who like Trump think he's an asshole. But at the end of the day, he's not
smart enough to choose a VP so he wouldn't get assassinated.
But this is it. At the end of the day, he's been elected president. He's not an idiot. He knows what he's doing. He knows how to manipulate people, and while
he's a businessman. He does it in a business way.
And while
arguably not a great businessman, but he's a businessman.
He's a businessman.
And he's a media personality, so he does it for the media personality.
And while he didn't necessarily build him up from the fucking ground because he got a big start alone, you still have to be smart.
It's just
stay
a few
wealthy.
$1 million.
Yeah.
But you'd say he's got more wealthy and he stayed wealthy. You have to. He's not an idiot, so he's going to be responsible with bloody nuclear codes. Frankly, it's a bit, I think, unreasonable. Again,
it'll just ruin the property value if you set him off. Well,
that's it. You can't go in there and drill for oil if it's fucking irradiated, can you?
Exactly.
And again, much like Clinton, I get why people thought she wanted to go to war. Frankly, she's also not an idiot. She's not going to go to war with Russia because that's a horribly stupid thing to do.
Look at the past wars that have happened.
And it's very condescending to think that a politician of 30 years who's got to where they are and has been employed in a lot of these situations is that stupid.
Yeah.
Because they're not. And I have the attitude of, I'm sat there sort of going back going, I don't know. I'm not a politician.
Mm.
You have to. It's hard for a lot of people, I think, to be able to look at someone and, again, with the expert thing, to trust someone who is more educated than them on a certain topic. Because it's very easy for us to say, oh, well, it's stupid of Clinton to do this and that. It's like, yeah, but who's the politician of 30 years?
Yeah.
But at the same time, at what point do you stop criticizing? Because you have to criticize.
Yeah.
It's a very frustrating thing.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's that we have to criticize the candidates, but we also have to view what the candidates have going for them.
Mm. And it's hard, especially, I definitely gave Clinton more of the benefit of the doubt than Trump. But frankly,
because you wanted Clinton to win. I did the same. I would have preferred Clinton over Trump. Mm-hmm. So I gave Trump a bit more of a hard deal on my Twitter timeline than I gave to Clinton.
In fairness,
I tried to make it equal on both sides, but because of my view on the situation, Trump got a worse deal on my Twitter feed than Clinton.
God, Jason.
And as understandably human as it is to want to give your own people the benefit of the doubt, you kind of have to do the exact opposite.
You do.
You have to expect more from the people who are on your side than you do from the people that admittedly don't share all the experiences, expectations, and values that you do.
That is very true. And it's definitely, I mean, in fairness, right, Trump did say a lot more worse things. So, I mean...
Yes,
sorry,
he did them very publicly as well.
I know there was a lot of people. I know a lot of I'm going to say Trump supporters, but when I use that term in this context, I am basically talking about like the Donald type, the extreme over the top Pepe,
the vocal big old minority.
Yeah, Pepe, Trump train, choo choo, all that.
Yep.
You can't bump the Trump. You can't bump the Trump.
Hashtag Jane Trump, all that people. But that. Oh shit.
You okay?
I fucking completely lost train of thought. I'm too busy thinking about Trump trains.
You lost your Trump train of thought, you mean?
It choo-chooed through my mind and like just erased all the other trains on the track is what it did.
Dude, that sounds painful. How's the collision? What insurance do you have on this? What's
I've got none. Trump took it all the way.
Choo-choo.
Oh yeah, there we go. Comments. And in debates, a lot of people said, "Oh, why are they giving Trump such a hard time?" Because he said much worse things. And again, as you say, it wasn't about policy. It is about a popularity contest. And at the end of the day, it's not. I don't
get the demographics you need, and those are like white, middle-aged, I don't know, people from the entire country, I guess, but mainly
America.
from like outside of cities.
Rurals,
yeah.
It seemed to be in inner cities. It seemed to be pretty. But in suburbs, it seemed to be 50-50, and then in rural areas, it was pretty much. For Trump.
That's how it's always going to be, and like to really play in on that, like especially the fears they have and the things they feel about other people. It just it was pretty much a demographic contest.
Since what you said about residents, here's some stats. Cities with over 50,000 population, 59% Democrat. Small cities or rural areas, 62% Republican.
Yeah.
And then
that
suburbs,
shows.
50-50. Almost exactly 50-50.
Because obviously, if you're in a city, generally speaking, you are you have to be a little more accepting of other people, and you have to be.
You got more people in your city, yeah.
Yeah, you're more people, but there's a lot more cultures and races, and you have to be more accepting of that.
Let's not just automatically assume that liberalism and multiculturalism are tied. I mean,
no.
But
you can be a Republican and still like the Republican idea and still have multiculturalism. You don't have to.
But I mean, we're talking about the idea of Trump pushing sort of isolationism and stuff like that. And,
No, but I mean, just there's this. I don't know. It seems to be this prevailing attitude, and maybe it's just in my echo chamber that that those who vote conservative are clearly have just not had their minds expanded. They've not met enough people. They've not interacted with a diverse enough set of people. I think we need to. Do exactly what we're saying. Respect that people can reach different conclusions, and that it's not simply like a lack of information, or a lack of experience. Because I think it's a condescending attitude to have, and it's a scary one to have because it encourages us to demonize.
The problem is, at the same time, for a lot of people, it is that. Like for a lot of people, it is a lot of people who are voting for Trump, or people in small towns who are quite isolationist, who are scared of stuff going on, and that's not obviously representative of all voters in any way, shape, or form.
But it's also not to say that the reasons for their conservatism are because they haven't they don't have enough black friends or any just we want to be clear about that.
And if we want to talk about the confounding influence that regional ignorance can have, I'd have to say there's a lot more urban professionals who were just completely blown away by what happened yesterday and had no idea that there was so much resentment building up in the lower classes. They were completely blindsided by this. So while, yes, out here in the rural parts of this country there is ignorance, there's still a lot of it going on, in Manhattan and Los Angeles as well.
Yeah. But do you not think that, statistically speaking, it would be more likely that if you lived in a city, you would have to be more accepting of?
I mean, I mean, if you're talking about just in terms of multiculturalism, then I mean, you're going because if you decide that if you're a xenophobic person, eventually you would move out of the city.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it doesn't. It's not. I think it's unfair to say that if we could just get these conservatives to move into cities, then they'd see the light.
I don't
in the same way that it would be unfair for Republicans to say, well, if we could just get these liberals to go to church once in a while, then they'd see the light.
That's it.
I would actually argue that it's easier to build an echo chamber in a city because there's a larger pool of like-minded people out there that you can create your comfy little enclave with.
Yeah.
Whereas in smaller communities, you don't have that luxury. You gotta stick it out and coexist with the libertarian next door and the green across the street and everyone else. There's no withdrawing into your own little neighborhoods or anything like that. We're just stuck together.
Like, the thing is about that, though, at least for as far as I've noticed, but I am from, a town in the Bible Belt, There
Dutch
are a
Bible
lot of
Belt.
the Dutch Bible Belt, yeah. And I went to school to like multiple schools in the Bible Belt. I'm now sort of taking a break from that and going to a school in the west of the country, in Rotterdam. And I immediately see a lot of difference about like people's opinions and what they express, and especially because like the Christian conservative opinions, the Dutch conservative opinions, which are probably more liberal than the US opinions anyway, like those are really more dominant in like the east of my country. Like the west of the country is definitely more tolerant like towards Muslims, not entirely, like not as much as you want to, but definitely more. Like they come in contact with them, they know what the situation's like, and they like find a way to not be, you know, so inagreeable with them. And like what I see in my neighborhood is like, yeah, those Muslims are all here to bomb everyone, and you know, like that sort of mentality. And I don't know, I feel like if you do sort of push people to get to know the people you dislike, that might solve a lot of the problems
like,
that people sort of stand for.
So like you say they're like demonizing.
Yes,
they don't
exactly.
understand.
Demonizing the other groups for what they sort of stand for. Like I get why people demonize Muslims, because you know they do have
predominantly the terrorism is done by Muslims in cases.
And there are some bad things in the Quran, and you can't deny that. But the Western Muslims are actually like a pretty nice group if you just talk to the right people, I guess. I mean, most people, like most Muslims I've talked to, are actually like quite nice and definitely not extreme. Not as I've been told by everyone here. So yeah, it's weird.
But obviously, as Kevin says, necessarily not. That's not necessarily if you put someone from your Bible Belt in a city, they're not going to become more accepting or anything. It's not.
Yeah.
You have to be open to it, yeah.
Maybe electroshock therapy will make them more accept. Wait, no.
No.
Wait,
no, that only works on gay people. You're wrong.
But it's definitely my sort of point was that like sort of it is Trump's isolationist kind of rhetoric definitely does statistically appeal more to people in small towns.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, because they're in a small town, so they're more isolationist by default.
Yeah. Well, that's literally yeah.
Yeah.
Well, not like I can sort of disagree on that, because I notice in towns here at least that you are sort of like bound to the people around you, and even if you don't agree, you're still like gonna live with them. If you have a problem, you go to your neighbor and ask for help, and even if you don't like them, you will do that anyway. And I think like the more isolationist people are actually in the city. Well, that might just be here, but
well, yeah,
no, that's true.
Isolationist. Well, that's it. I mean, again, then you start talking about sort of like different kinds of isolation, because I'm pretty isolationist personally, but as kind of culturally speaking, I'm pretty, not.
Because Matt hates everybody. That's why.
It's like I don't really like, I don't really go out and talk to people or anything like that. I sort of stay in my house all day, and I don't know what to do. Actually, that's a good.
I mean, you could talk to the builders outside your windows.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, those are probably nice.
That'll go swell.
They probably have
Let's talk about
diverse views. You can expand your attitude.
Man murders builder in flat.
13-year-old girl murders builder in flat.
Maybe I have to sort of like invite like the men sort of one by one for coffee, murder them, hide them in the cupboard, and hopefully I can get rid of all of them.
Welcome to Hitman Matt Solution.
Yep. Totally makes sense.
That is how I'm playing. I'm playing this on 2 at the moment. That's how I play it. It's like lure them into room, stab. They turn to dust. Lure the next one in, stab, turn to dust, so on and so forth until they're all dead. And then,
it's easy cleanup.
Well, that's the thing. In real life, I suppose, they're gonna just get replaced by other builders. Just go, well, they're all dead. Or maybe at some point, like the police would turn up. I mean, there are consequences in real life, unfortunately.
Which is like a good example of like, oh, if there's a person shouting politics being mean, if you're mean right back to them, then they'll just get replaced. I'm trying to tie it in. I'm sorry, it's not working.
Oh yeah, this wasn't an election podcast, wasn't it?
but that is a point though. It is sort of. Do you respond with hate to people who are hateful, or do you take the higher ground?
They
go high, we go low.
Yeah, but the thing, there's so much of that where you don't get to sit there and take the pompous high ground, and that's what I've seen happening a lot, at least on my Twitter feed. is just the self-righteous high ground, which is not a high ground at all.
Well, what would an example of that be? Do you think?
Just in the terms of very explicitly saying, yeah, okay, well, we're going to take the high ground and deal with, and just being particularly condescending about it.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough.
I mean, that's an attitude that it's very easy to take right now. That, okay, yes, we'll tolerate your infantile presidential candidate because we're going to take the high ground.
Well,
no,
I think
we're
it
not
was
really doing that.
I think it was Lacey Green. It was a big thing about Lacey Green.
Oh
no, not Lacey Green.
She made
That was
continue.
a disaster.
Well,
Continue while I cry.
she made a tweet. Was like, we have put aside our differences, and about 3 hours later, she said, "Fuck you, Republic. Yeah, we're living in a."
Hang on. Philip DeFranco tweeted that out earlier. Let me bring it up quickly.
Yeah, it was a real big contrast. Like the 3 hours before she tweeted that bad thing was like, I feel like she had some sort of hope for Hillary, so she sort of was like, we'll just amend and put the U back in the USA.
No matter who wins, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Before Trump was elected, she said, regardless of the outcome, we are clearly a deeply divided and broken country. So much work ahead to mend, heal, and restore the USA. And then Trump was elected. She said, we're now under total Republican rule. Textbook fascism. Fuck you, white America. Fuck you, you racist, misogynistic pieces of shit.
But again, here's the problem.
Good night.
Here's the problem, right? I can kind of empathise with her again because in her position, you'd be fucking furious, wouldn't you? I mean, that's out of anger.
It's like what we said earlier, Matt, about when you tweet out your opinions on Twitter. She's doing it to her Twitter. That's her feelings. It's her.
She's a bigger audience, so.
Yeah,
she does.
That's the problem with that.
It's tactically a foolish decision. It's like you need to have like an anger journal, or you just need to not try and have like positive things that you send out. Like have an angry Twitter. That's fine, but this is like it's a very
make it private.
Message.
Oh, I did just notice though. She did tweet after that when they go low, we go high. So.
It's hard when you have any sort of public eye on you, no matter how small it is. If you have some reason that you have to be professional, it's in some way connected to your job. It's a gamble as to what you say. It depends on what you're working with. I know, Matt, you're able to be a little bit more vocal with yours.
A little?
With mine, it's like I don't really get into politics too much with stuff because I know the community I represent, the community I work for.
Yeah.
It's one where we just completely ban all discussion of politics, religion, that sort of thing. We want to make it a safe space for people so they don't have to have those arguments.
Yeah.
So it really depends on not just you personally, but who else is looking at you.
Yeah, for someone like me, I only have 300 followers. I could tweet out much more polarizing views than something like Matt could tweet because of the community has and what Lacey Green can tweet. But
to be fair, to compare you to Matt, Matt's been shouting opinions for a very long time. It's sort of part of his character
people
now
know Matt
on
as
Twitter.
being the shouty, sweary,
there's
fuck,
a thing,
fuck, fuck.
Well, there's a thing. It doesn't matter what size we're already. If you set a precedent on what you expect, people expect. This is the problem with people looking in. And one of the reasons I've been trying to cut back on swearing and stuff like that is because, obviously, if someone looks at me swearing a bunch like that on my Twitter, that's kind of par for the course. Me swearing a bunch isn't necessarily me even being angry.
It's just you being mad.
It's just you being you.
Let's say someone looking from the outside in is gonna possibly say it's incredibly angry, incredibly hostile, because obviously it's a different perspective, and you haven't acclimatized to, necessarily how I talk or whatever. Out again with Lacey Green. Are we, from the outside looking in, can we understand the context? Because obviously, I assume she tweets her feelings quite a lot, and she's probably
she's very much in the big.
Very vocal.
Yeah, she's very much in her sphere of view. She's very vocal in.
So this is going to be a thing where she's angry, she's emotional, so she tweets about it. That's the default thing. And obviously, as you say, there is a level of sometimes you should try and control.
Sometimes try and if you've got a big audience, try and limit it slightly.
Again, but not even if you have a big audience, it's just sometimes it is responsible to not let out your anger in that sense.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's hard to not to do. So what? Yeah, I can empathise with her. I think it's probably a bit unfair to be giving her the amount of flack she's getting for it.
Well, I mean, I'm sure we've all been in the same position of tweeting something and immediately deleting it. Although we do immediately.
I don't.
I know. I usually delete it.
I delete if it has a spelling error or I haven't put a fuck in somewhere.
I don't delete spelling errors. Oh.
If we weren't all inherently attracted by the sensationalist attitudes and by the outrage at that, a lot of the news sites that exist online and all of those and certain YouTube channels would not exist. No. It's a media that we are attracted to as humans. It's something that we are going to feel. We are going to feel that initial outrage.
Oh, there's some YouTube drama!
I mentioned no names.
It's your host, Killer Keemstar.
Killer
Keemstar. Into the news.
What's up, guys? Guys here.
Sorry, continue. We've ruined the podcast. I'm so sorry.
How long are we gonna take? Because my bladder's exploding.
We can finish it now. It's gonna finish in 10 minutes. But if you,
I think it can last 10. But
you can last 10.
I can. Yes.
Welcome to the marathon portion of the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to
Will
point
they
out,
last?
I want to point out, it's perfectly dignified to pitch yourself on a stream.
I mean, if only you had free access
why it's
to
called a stream.
tampons, so you wouldn't have to just hold it all in, you know, because you have to control your bladder as a woman.
Yeah,
I know,
it's quite a
right?
pain, isn't it? And I'll remember that for next time. I just sort of assumed I have to be there the whole time, so I have to, like... I made sure I was hydrated, but, you know...
And you're a nurse. And you're a nurse. You probably have, like, easy access to, like, adult diapers.
Remember, this is the US presidential election podcast. Discussing tampons.
No, because there was outrage recently about that sort of thing, because people were discussing
tax, wasn't it?
Yeah, people were discussing whether or not stuff like that should be taxed.
Yeah.
And that was an issue that was brought up. So it is relevant.
Yeah.
Why do people want to tax that shit anyway?
Will Trump remove the tax on tampons?
Actually, now we're talking about medical stuff. I got something. You know how, like, Trump made statements about vaccinations? Because that's going to be an issue as well.
Oh, that's not even gonna work.
You know what? No, that one's on you, Britain. You license that dude. So
vaccinations are not in the areas that vaccinations are not required in order to attend school. There's been a huge resurgence in diseases that we had nearly eradicated through the use of constant vigilance with the vaccinations.
Well, again, this is something that is... It's not one of those kind of things where it's like, oh, go live in your own bubble. It's like, no, this is really affecting everyone very negatively. Yeah. Can you stop that?
You think, like, one little kid doesn't get a vaccination and is carrying something, goes to Disney World, and then suddenly people from all over the world have been exposed to that.
Yeah, as it's ridiculous. Tim Minchin said, oh no, we fear vaccinations because some will get vaccinated and they might end up autistic and not like hugs. Oh no.
But at least they won't be dead.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, this is the thing as well. I know. There are some vaccinations, at least in the UK, that aren't being done anymore because the diseases are so gone.
Yeah, that they can't really research. I got since I'm in school at age 16, I got vaccinations last year. They're doing 4 vaccinations at the moment in schools in the UK. And
4. Which
there's the polio one. There's tetanus.
There's one which is like 5 in 1, isn't there?
Yeah. There's like the big one.
Oh yeah, that too. We have HPV as well at 12 for women.
HPV is a big one that they are trying to
limit. I didn't get that one, but yeah, there's like 4 vaccinations that they do, and that's what happens in schools, which is good in the UK.
But why only
trying
in schools?
to regulate
Is it for
the
newborns?
HPV one?
No, it's well, it happened for me in what is year 11, so I'd have been about 15, 16 when they did it. It's like a top up of when you last got your vaccination.
Oh right, okay, that makes
sense.
sense.
The HPV fight is that still on the basis that it doesn't do enough to discourage premarital sex? Is that still the argument against the HPV?
Yeah, they're trying to say that you shouldn't have sex and you won't get HIV or HPV. And Pence cut /funding to Planned Parenthood, and then there was a massive HIV outbreak in that area right after that. So.
You know, that's just correlation. We can't obviously draw any conclusions from that at all.
Yeah, it's sort of weird. Like, I know when we started HPV vaccinations, I was 14, I think, and people were just making points of like, oh, but you get infertile and bad things happen, and I just got them anyway, but it was a big discussion point among a lot of people, because, like, you ask a 12-year-old, like, oh, you want a vaccination for a disease you might get when you sleep around a bit. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to sleep around. Maybe I'll be the whore of the town. I don't know. So I'm just going to get it anyway.
I mean, you are in the Netherlands.
The thing is, they want to put the decision for vaccinations in the hands of the parents, which it shouldn't be, because yes, they're your children, but your children are affecting everyone else. Even if you guys don't get sick, even if you're fine with getting sick, there's so many people like me. I have to take immunosuppressants. I have to take chemotherapy for my autoimmune stuff. So I had to avoid people for so long because I wasn't used to getting sick so much, because I had no immune system. Eventually,
if
I
you'd
just had to say
encountered a
fuck
disease,
it.
you'd have died. It was.
Yeah, eventually I had to say fuck it, and I was just constantly ill. And luckily, like, the worst thing that I got was MRSA. But if I had not been in a college environment that required vaccinations for the big ugly things, I don't know how that would have worked out.
Yeah.
It's herd immunity that we need to keep, and we cannot trust parents to keep up with that.
It's the attitude, isn't it? Of it's very easy to look at this thing. It's the same with climate change. It's kind of a similar.
It's not affecting me, so why should I care?
Well, it's not even that. It's very much they can't see the effects of it. It's very easy to go to someone. Okay, here's the thing in case. It's like, well, yeah, but it might cause this thing. It's like, oh, he probably won't get it. It's like looking at, oh, there's no difference. I can't see it. And it's very easy to have that attitude, but obviously, when you look at it pretty objectively, it's like, oh, your kid could die of this disease.
Well, you know what's actually interesting that I've seen happen in the Netherlands lately is that actually the higher educated sort of parent in their 30s from the city is actually choosing not to vaccinate the children because they think, it's actually better to have the illness and the chance of getting it is so low, so why even do it? And there's just junk in there anyway. Well, you think they're high educated. Why would they even think that? Because the entire point is the herd immunity. Like, even if polio is 4 cases in an entire year in the Netherlands, which I think it is, I'm not sure about the statistics, but I do believe that that's a number that I read somewhere. But even if it's only 4 cases in a population of 17 million, it's still the herd immunity you're going for. It's not just polio, by the way. Yeah, it's just that mentality is sort of taking over, and that makes the vaccination amount per year, I believe, 4% lower now.
Do you think being highly educated in a field that isn't medical, or science at the very least, do you think that perhaps makes you more distrustful of?
I think it makes people
not more distrustful.
Think they know everything.
Well, that's what I mean. Do you think it makes them a bit more? Oh, well, I don't agree with that, and they get more. It's very easy. It's very easy for someone who's not educated, to a university degree or whatever, to go to be a doctor say to them, this thing's very important, then go, okay, you know best. But someone who's educated on a similar level in a different field to go, oh, well, I'm also, I don't have to listen,
I think the scary thing, though, for me is, and I guess the reason that, I mean, at least in my view, that the vaccine stuff has really not just died, is that if you take as a given that, regardless of your understanding, you suspect a vaccine of having the potential for side effects. I mean, it's not, but we'll just take that as an assumption. The idea that the government has a right to say you have to vaccinate your child, that the government has a right, even though we know that it will be beneficial for all of humans and beneficial for your individual child, the idea that the government has a right to mandate that is something that is terrifying and sort of unprecedented. And even areas where we were you have to educate your children, there have been people took the state to court to say, no, that's our decision.
Well, if you force people to do something, there's going to be a backlash from forcing them to do something.
Particularly when you're dealing with parenting, that we have a natural kind of instinctual protection of our young, and the idea that other people are mandating these things that to our minds are maybe dangerous. even if that's unfounded, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's unfounded. If you believe it, then it's real to you.
It's definitely in the United States. I think obviously the culture there is very much more self-controlling and
right.
Yes.
That is
there's that, and also in particular, our regulatory bodies just are not as trustworthy as they might be in other nations in Europe, and that that goes for both the left and the right. They don't
this is the one that was like,
trust.
no, eat tons and tons and tons more starch, please.
Well,
Right.
you're talking about the regulatory bodies not being good, but they're trying to cut funding to the regulatory bodies.
I didn't say that regulatory bodies weren't good. I said that they weren't particularly trusted by the public. I think they are, but unfortunately we have this problem where frequently the regulatory bodies are basically wholly owned subsidiaries of the industries they're supposed to regulate.
Yeah.
Isn't that
And
like
so
the milk
nobody
stuff, the
can
got milk stuff?
Yeah, and it's the same way with every American regulatory body, whether it's the Mine and Mineral Association, I forget what
You got to go back to like tobacco to see when all that stuff kind of first started.
Yeah.
Our regulatory bodies it's a way for the industry to write legislation that benefits themselves. And so I can't really blame anti-vaxxers for being skeptical of the things that the FDA tells them, because they don't believe they can trust them. They believe that it's Big Pharma's money that's deciding all the policies.
Well,
so that even if the FDA is telling the truth, people don't know when they can trust them.
People are sick of experts. We're back to the people are sick of experts thing. That
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's obviously in UK and Europe. Obviously, the culture is just its resting point is generally a lot more leftist and a lot more kind of trusting of the government.
Right.
I always say, our fucking British right is US left. David Cameron, it would be a Democrat in the United States. And it's very much, even if that distrust is there, we are so culturally ingrained further to the left and more with a bigger government, with with wider control and power.
But take for an example, let's imagine that the UK government mandated a particular diet for your children. That there'd been enough dietary research, and so your children were going to be subject to a particular calorie limit based on their height and their weight and their body type, and it was going to be made up of certain macronutrient ratios and stuff that had been demonstrated to be appropriate to try and reduce healthcare costs for the country, because that's a public service, and so you need to regulate those costs, and it's everyone who's bearing the responsibility if you misfeed your kid. Can you empathize with people really feeling like it doesn't really matter, even if the science is completely valid? It's an overextension of what you should be able to do, and particularly kind of getting in between parenting, it just makes it really difficult to swallow for a lot of people.
Yeah,
I can understand that people want to maintain control. Vaccines in particular, I've studied immunology, and it's something I'm very passionate about. So I do have very strong feelings, but I understand the viewpoint that you're bringing. My main issue is that the people who are supporting the people who are trying to push these more not requiring these sorts of things and not forcing vaccines on people are also trying to cut the red tape at the FDA, as a quote, and speed the approval of life-saving medications. So they're trying to push out stuff faster, and yet that would decrease the amount of testing they can do to make sure and to prove to people that things are safe. They are taking so long to approve drugs because they need to make sure that they are not going to harm people, and they want to be able to prove to those people who are skeptical that they're not going to harm them. But they're also trying to stop that. They're trying to reduce that. So it's just a self-fulfilling cycle of disbelief and skepticism.
I'm gonna ask a final question to wrap up this topic now, because we should be finishing.
Oh, Matt, but I want to keep going until I pass out and collapse.
My final question to is do any of you think Trump will actually sort of... Yeah, do you think he'll keep that kind of culture the same? Do you think he'll encourage it, or do you think he will more likely try and push? Because that obviously Trump is not necessarily a typical Republican. So while on some of his reviews he's way more right than the Republicans, on other views he's actually more left than Republicans. So do you think, as a sort of public health thing, as a business thing, even how do you think he'll sort of respond to that idea of vaccinations and all that? Because he's never really made a comment on it, as far as I know.
It comes down to whether Trump holds very specific beliefs on something, depending on what he does with it. He holds very specific beliefs on immigration, so he does specific stuff with that. If Trump has a specific belief on vaccinations that he holds to heart, like vaccinations are bad or vaccinations are okay, then he'll put it in. But if he doesn't have like a formulated opinion on it, I think he'll give it to somebody else in his if somebody else that he's chosen to, like the medical people he chooses to put it forwards. If he doesn't have a clear view on it, I think is what he'll do with that. I think that's how it would run if he doesn't have a clear idea on what's happening.
And the assumption there, I suppose, is medical people will be Republicans, and they will be more likely to not support.
But then you never know which Republicans he's going to elect that.
Well, he has also done the whole, in his attacks against the Affordable Care Act, he has also talked about, replacing it with this health savings thing that who knows. But he did also talk about possibly looking at, I think, restricting patent law with regard to Big Pharma, which could have some impact there. There can be some overlap in that policy that was part of his campaign.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as vaccines go, I don't think he's been particularly clear. But to the extent that he needs to dismantle stuff, who knows?
He said specifically that he wants to stop the regulation on pharmaceutical prices.
Okay, I'm reading a thing that says that Trump thinks that vaccines are possibly harmful.
Yeah.
Okay, if that is true, I haven't checked the sources on this, but if that's true, then I think Trump will... If he believes that strong enough, he'll push it. If he doesn't believe that's strong enough, somebody else will.
I mean, the way that's worded, it kind of sounds like something he was probably asked at a rally, and he went, well, that's possible, and kind of moved on,
I think Trump as a whole, he himself is not going to cause a whole lot of change and cause all of the problems. I think it's more down to who he is delegating his work to, that they have all of these polarizing views, and the rallying of the emotions of the people and then letting them down and seeing where that goes. We're going to make it through the 4 years. It's just going to be a lot of fighting, whether it's petitions and rallies from the citizens, or if it's going to be in the House and Senate, everything being contested, nothing actually getting through, nothing actually getting done.
As we touched upon earlier, I think it's America right now is uneasy and uncertain, and it's
just a giant question mark.
Yeah, it's how America decides to settle after this, whether they settle being all Republican, all the guns are blazing, or it becomes liberal again, or however it settles. Right now, we don't know. Right now, there's uncertainty, there's anxiety in a bunch of groups, but with Trump, it's not going to be the end of the world, but it just depends how Trump goes as president. If he becomes like a Richard Nixon, then, well, we're fucked.
Okay.
But,
Final flash question for all of you. Well, which I'm gonna ask the same question. Do you think Trump will inherently, at least for the next 4 years, ruin the United States? And I say that at a cultural level or a policy level. Do you think he will strongly negatively impact the United States? Anne?
I think not him directly. I think the people around him, like Mike Pence.
So his administration, then? Do you think?
His administration will mainly rule.
Okay, I'll reword. Okay, the same question, but Trump and his administration.
I think if Trump...
No, wait your turn! Wait your turn,
why are we doing turns? Okay.
Wait your turn!
Wait in line!
God.
I'm British and I don't understand queuing. I'm ashamed. Alright, keep going.
Kevin. See, Kevin's American. He gets it. Kevin.
Yeah, no, I think... as far as the country, I think the country matters less and less, and that the people matter more. And I don't think we voted for who the people are going to be and how they're going to behave. I don't think that's in the purview of any presidential administration.
Okay. Freedom.
he and his administration aren't going to ruin everything. It's not going to be a pleasant time, but it's not the end of the world and the end of the United States.
Okay.
It feels like it might be, but I think that's just still us slightly overreacting from the result that shocked us.
Ghost Insanity.
I agree with Freedom with the fact of the overreaction. It's just like, I don't think there's anything that's seriously going to happen, but there is going to be some slight changes that might have a more effect on the country than we expected.
Jason.
I think the country was already in the process of being ruined long before Trump came along.
MAGA.
I don't think he'll help it,
Hashtag
but
MAGA.
I think in the end, we can fix it.
If we can't fix it, no one can. Okay.
I think I voided my turn by jumping in line on it. No, I think with Trump as a figurehead, he's not going to ruin America. He's not going to be able to completely rift America into completely divided. He's not going to ruin stuff. He might put some stuff back into previous years. He might ruin the climate with his climate change views a little bit, but he's not going to entirely ruin the country. The country's not in that bad of a state at the moment that it's going to be entirely ruined. However, if Pence gets in, I might lean more towards America possibly having issues. But right now, with Trump as a figurehead, America isn't going to fall apart.
Okay.
It's more sort of America's going to have some issues, have some contention, but then ultimately it's going to be all right in the end.
Okay, well, I think that was a very good discussion. We've had over 3 hours.
Jesus Christ.
I let it overrun a bit because, we were talking, so that's fine.
It was fun, it's fine.
Last but not least, I'm going to go down one last time so you can promote your things, Anne.
What? What do you want?
Promote your thing, Twitter, whatever. Who cares?
Okay, my is like, I don't know. It says on the top of the fucking screen at @OnlineHov. I rarely tweet, so that's a promotion.
Okay, the way you spell that is Anne, my, Jin.
Shut the fuck up, man.
I want to point out, right, when I asked Mr. Nerdcubed how he'd pronounce Anne's name here, he said Dave. So,
please don't bring that up again.
Stop, Dave.
At Dave Meow.
Wait, here we
God.
go. Hashtag Dave my Jin. Kevin, you promote your stuff.
No, I hate you.
All right, yeah, so I am Cheers Kevin. You can find me on Twitter at Cheers Kevin or various YouTube things. If you type in Cheers Kevin, you'll find me there.
You have like 5 YouTube channels at this point.
I do have a lot of YouTube channels. I also have a Twitch channel with Cheers Kevin as well.
Oh,
Maybe
God,
later
Kevin.
tonight. Who knows?
God.
Yeah.
The
And I can talk fast.
Stop
Oops.
making things.
Oh my god.
Freedom.
I hate you.
I am Freedom, more commonly known on Twitter as Hortensio Orlandi because some guy in Spain has Freedom.
What a
Sucks.
bastard.
I hate not having unified branding. But most people know me as Dodgers community assistant. So yeah, that's a bottle for me. I don't really stream that often. If I do, it's like really bad. So don't watch my shit.
Oh, well, a good way to say yourself, sure.
Promote yourself by shitting on yourself. Good job.
Ghost Insanity.
I am Ghost Insanity X on Twitter, and I am Ghost Insanity on YouTube. So there.
Short and sweet. Jason.
I am Jason42, that's JAECYN42 on Twitter and YouTube.
Again, short and sweet. I get Einstein Replica.
Right, Einstein Replica on Twitter. If you like lots of tweets of completely useless shit and sometimes wrestling, follow me. If you like, aside from that, I have nothing to promote, nothing to do. I am just a speck on the internet that needs to be grubbed off.
Yeah,
not wrong.
really.
Thank you very
You
much.
tweeted Dave my shit at me. I'm not happy.
Hashtag Dave Mayan Hoff.
Get on it.
I hate you.
Thank you all for
Scott
coming.
fucked
Thank
off
you.
to go make us a rocket.
Thank you all for being guests. Obviously, Scott wasn't here for the whole time, but he's Scott Manley on YouTube. I'm sure you probably know him. He's the highest build guy here. Thankfully, Scott
He's the
Manley.
Kerbal Space Program man that we all know and love.
He's the Kerbal Space Program man we all know and love. Good. Yep.
Yep.
He unites people with rockets. He says he doesn't like. He's
the only time that a rocket being used doesn't cause war.
He had a nice quote the other day, which I think we'll end on. I always like to say I prefer to celebrate things we have in common, rockets, than argue about our differences. Thank you all for coming. I've been Matt Phobia. If you'd like to follow me on Twitter, if you don't already, for some reason, if you hear from the YouTube promotion page or whatever, I'm at Matt Phobia. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for joining me, and bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.